Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the January 18th, 2023 meeting of the Milton Select Board. This is a combined in-person hybrid meeting held in the Cronin Conference Room at Milton Town Hall. Just to introduce ourselves, I'm Martha Doyle, this year's chair.
Mike Zulis, vice chair.
Roxanne Musto, member.
Secretary Wells will be joining us by Zoom, and Member Bradley will be joining us possibly in person, and if not in person, by Zoom. The order of business for today will be the Select Board meeting, followed by the Governor Stoughton Trust meeting. We will then go back from the Governor Stoughton Trust meeting into Select Board executive session, just to let everybody know what the timetable and schedule looks like. At this time, I'd like to invite everybody to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our third item on the agenda is public comment. As is our tradition, we set aside 15 minutes for public comment, with each speaker having up to 3 minutes. And we appreciate the decorum of all of our speakers. We will entertain our speakers by virtue of seeing who our participants are.
Mr. Chair, Henry McLean has raised his hand. I will promote him.
Okay, Mr. McLean. We ask if each of the speakers during public comment will please be sure to identify themselves and their address in town.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Excellent.
Great. Hello, my name is Henry McLean. I've been a resident of Milton since 1998 at 147 School Street. I've been a member of Sustainable Milton since 2006 and served as past chair of the Milton Alternate Energy Committee from 2008 until 2014. I'm also a practicing architect and adjunct professor of architecture, developing and teaching curriculum in sustainability since 1991. In 2009, our Milton Alternate Energy Committee began working with the town's planning and community development and consolidated services to achieve green community status by developing an energy reduction action plan in 2010. Our committee worked with the DOER software to monitor the required 20% reduction in Milton's municipal energy footprint, which was down 17% by 2013 and 23% by 2015. Milton was awarded green community status in early 2011, part of the first 10% of DOER green communities, which is now up to 280 of the 351 in the state. With that green community status, Milton became eligible for state and utility grants over $1 million. 2011, our committee received support from the town to access the inventory greenhouse gas emissions tools for the entire town through ICLEI USA International Council of Local, ICLEI is an International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives. In 2014, we completed this work, documenting that 56% of the entire town's greenhouse gases were from homes. Looking at just buildings, the residential piece is over 80%, as compared to town and school buildings, which was about 2.5%. So Sustainable Milton continues to advocate for a town-wide campaign to help the disproportionately large residential sector in our town achieve and surpass the energy reductions municipal buildings achieved back in 2015. And we continue with efforts to help educate homeowners with green home fairs, presentations, and projects like the Solarize Milton campaign back in 2018, which attracted 181 leads and eventually 28 homes, adding another 15% to Milton's photovoltaic rooftops. So we also determined that over 50% of homes in Milton were eligible for solar systems that were capable of returning about a 15 to 20% ROI. So I'm very excited to join my colleagues and friends in supporting this important proposal to form a new committee to develop a full climate action plan for Milton, and look forward to providing ongoing support for a carbon-free Milton in the years ahead. Thanks so much, and that's the end of my...
Well done. Thank you, Mr. McLean.
Thank you very much, and best for the project.
You have Susan Wilbur with a hand raised by chance, Nick?
I'm sorry?
Susan Wilbur?
No,
She's spoken with me. Okay.
not yet. Next is Cheryl Tagayas.
Cheryl, you are recognized. 2 evenings of work in a row for you, Cheryl.
Good evening, Chair Doyle and members of the board. I am Cheryl Tagayas, a member of the planning board, though I am speaking for myself this evening. I am an architect also, and I am a LEED accredited professional since 2006. That's a U.S. Green Building Council accreditation under the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design program. I would like to speak also in support of the creation of a climate action planning committee. I believe that climate change is the greatest challenge of our times, with potentially profound impacts for the environment, public health, infrastructure, and the economy. Developing a climate action plan is critical to bring the community together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to adapt to the local impacts of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Next is Mary Ann Millsap.
Okay, could you promote Mary Ann?
Just lowered her hand. Hang on. Oh, here she is.
Are you able to hear me now?
We are. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm actually Nancy Wilbur. I had to borrow.
We were looking for you.
I had to borrow a computer, had a little problem. And I couldn't get her name changed. But thank you very much. I'm at 50 Caroline Drive in Milton, Fuller Village resident and a member of our green team, residents here who are working for sustainability. And I will read a letter of support to the select board in favor of a Milton climate-focused committee. 121 Milton residents at Fuller Village signed this letter of support. And the letter reads, "We support the creation of a climate-focused committee within the town of Milton. As Milton residents, we believe that the institution of this committee is urgent and necessary to combat the detrimental effects of climate change on the well-being of our fellow citizens. The creation of this committee will advance a climate action plan to protect us as well as future generations. As persons who are 65 and over, we at Fuller Village care not only about our own health, which is adversely affected by extreme weather events, air pollution, and the like. We also care about the generations following us whose economic and physical well-being are severely threatened. Since we must take responsibility locally first, we want Milton, as well as our state, country, and world, to make it a priority to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We support Milton priorities and programs that mitigate and prepare our municipal bodies, town land and structures, and our citizens for climate change, already evidenced locally and around the world. The planning task is urgent and overdue. These priorities support long-term sustainability, health, and well-being throughout our town. They also benefit our residents today. For example, a climate action plan can benefit residents economically now through greater access to affordable green energy practices, as well as state and federal funding for climate change mitigation. Within the Fuller Village community, a green team was developed to advance our own efforts regarding sustainability. The Green Team is a group of Fuller Village residents supported by staff who promote a sustainable community and world through educating and activating fellow residents. We offer monthly programming and would be eager to partner with the Milton Climate Committee. As members of the wider Milton community, it is incredibly important to us that we see these efforts advanced within our local government. We look forward to working with the Milton Climate Committee to reduce and prepare for the impact of climate change. Sincerely, Fuller Village residents, 121 of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mr. Chair, Lucy Meadows is next.
Okay. Lucy, you are on mute.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. I'm from 12 Columbine Road in Milton, and I'm an ordinary citizen here to speak in favor of a climate action planning committee. Actually, I was surprised to hear that we don't even have one yet, because as a coastal town in the Northeast, we can expect 1 to 2 feet of additional sea level rise just between now and 2050. So I want to share briefly 2 projections of climate risk for Milton over the next 30 years. This is from a website that's based on peer-reviewed research called riskfactor.com. And first, in 30 years, the number of Milton properties projected to be at risk of severe flooding is 936 properties, or 16% of all the properties in town. And second, in 30 years, the miles of Milton roads at moderate risk of being impassable due to flooding is 48 miles of roads, which is 25% of the total. That's scary to imagine. So obviously we owe it to ourselves, and especially our children, to do all we can to prevent these and other disasters. So a climate action plan could help engage Milton citizens in 3 ways: to work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for everybody's sake, to deal with local effects of climate change for the sake of us in Milton, and finally, to take advantage of federal and state funding for this work, for the sake of all this and of the town's budget. So I ask you to approve a Climate Action Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't want to mispronounce. Taya Pooner is next.
Okay. I think this is a student.
Hi.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. My name is Taya Puner, and I've lived here in Milton on 45 Oak Road since I was 2 years old. I'm currently a junior at Milton Academy. I'm a member of Sustainable Milton, and I frequently sit in on meetings of the Climate Action Plan Working Group. I strongly believe that climate change is not just an issue of the future, but an issue that we face every day. As a teenager, I believe it is my responsibility to stand up for this issue now. If I do not, it may affect what my future and the future for generations after mine will look like. Climate change isn't just about extreme temperatures and sea level rise, though both extremely important, but it is also a matter of public health. Fossil fuel combustion contributes to many health concerns, including allergies, cardiovascular diseases, respiratory diseases, and even mental health disorders. That is why Massachusetts general laws state that we must reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and that is why reaching these general laws is so important. Though this may seem like an intangible goal, the solutions to make it possible do exist. Right now, it's just a matter of when Milton will begin to take the steps towards reaching these goals. Climate change cannot be solved in a day, nor can it be solved by only a few individuals. However, as some of this town's leaders, you have the amazing opportunity to take action and help Milton reach the Massachusetts climate goals. On behalf of kids like me, who are scared of the world we are growing up in, I urge you to choose to take that first step and approve the proposal to form a Climate Action Planning Committee in Milton. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I have loved growing up in Milton, and I strongly believe forming a climate action planning committee will be the first piece in sustaining this town so that future generations will love growing up here too. Thank you.
Thank you. I want you to know that your letter will be a part of the public record, as will the letters that were submitted by others speaking this evening.
And Mr. Chair, that concludes everybody who has raised their hand for public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Did you want to join us, Senator Timilty, doing public comment? I would love to, Mr. Chair. Please, take the chair.
Hello, hi, how are you? Hello.
How's it going?
Mr. Milano, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. It's a privilege to be here tonight before you.
Thank you for being with us. It's our privilege as well.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I promise you I will be very brief. I know you have a very long agenda tonight, and I thank you for the opportunity. Just briefly, and we've had informal discussions about this in the days past. Governor Baker, obviously, as we're well aware, in what I look upon as an incredibly wrong-headed and a terrible decision, elected not to sign the home rule petition that I filed on behalf of the town, and of course Rep. Driscoll and Rep. Fluker-Oakley were co-sponsors. Terrible decision, and that's putting it mildly. But obviously we have to move forward here, and in conjunction obviously with the board, and obviously I welcome the consultations and the wisdom. I have refiled the home rule petition as a bill, which we're currently embarked upon our bill filing process, which will wrap up Friday, January 20th at 5 o'clock. I have filed the bill. It's a carbon copy of the home rule petition. And we were off and running. The bill's already filed. Also, last week I had an impromptu meeting with the new Secretary of DOT, Secretary Fiandaca, Secretary Gina Fiandaca. She was very gracious and took the time to listen. And I explained to her that Randolph Ave Route 28 and Chickatobit Road, as we all know, is an incredibly dangerous road, incredibly dangerous axis of roads between Chickatobit, the intersection, and the road in its totality. I also explained to the Secretary that in what was a horrible decision, Governor Baker declined to sign the home rule petition. And I invited Secretary Fiandaca to come take a look firsthand at Randolph Ave Route 28 and Chickatobit Road with us. Of course, back in March of 2022, I hosted, along with yourselves, and Rep. Driscoll obviously was there, Secretary Tesler of DOT. So Secretary Fiandaca has made a commitment to come and view firsthand Randolph Ave, Route 28, and Chickatobit Road. And today, as you know, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, I sent a communication to Secretary Fiandaca asking her to start the process administratively to lower the speed limits on Chickatobit Road.
Thank you very kindly for all of those three very important steps.
There are different ways to get this done, and obviously we're going to pursue each and every one of them together. I thank Rep. Driscoll and Rep. Fluker-Oakley. They secured passage of this bill, home rule petition, in the House. I secured passage of it back in December of 2020, and this past October in the State Senate. And the governor let us down, the prior governor let us down on this one. He did. Made no sense whatsoever. As I said to Politico in a statement a couple of days past, quite simply, this bill would save lives. So it has been refiled by myself. I will be inviting and seeking co-sponsors. And your delegation from Milton will be working hard on it once again. And there are more than one way to get things done, and we're going to keep working on it. In the short term, as we've talked about before, I secured $20,000 for Randolph Ave, for Milton Police Patrol, strictly dedicated to Randolph Ave. I calibrated the monies with Chief King, and of course talked with you folks here on the board, and I thank you very much for your advice. It will increase, will generate 200 to 250 additional patrols for Randolph Ave by the Milton Police, strictly for Randolph Ave Route 28. I also secured the same amount of money for the Milton Police for patrols dedicated for Route 138. Sadly and tragically, in both cases, we've sustained tragedies on both roads. One tragedy is too many, and it's my aim to obviously rein that in, stop it, and make the roads the safe roads that they should be for this town and the entire region.
Senator, when the Secretary is available to take a site walk at Chickatobit and Route 28, please just let us know. We'll all do our best to meet for a schedule.
The entire board obviously will be invited, and obviously I want to invite citizens as well. I believe the secretary's a person who's willing to listen. She's a very gracious individual. She has a great resume. She used to be the Commissioner of Transportation for the City of Boston. And I believe she knows how to get things done. We have a new administration with Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll. I'm excited about their abilities and their common touch. So we have to move forward. I'm not happy, as I know we're all unhappy with the prior governor's decision to not sign the bill and leave without an explanation. But we have to get beyond that and keep moving forward. And in conjunction with Rep. Driscoll and Rep. Luca Oakley and this board and our fellow citizens, we will keep working on it.
And please let us know what we can do to support as this goes through the process that you've outlined. Members of the board that may want to have comments or questions with the senator on this topic? Not this time.
Senator, do you think it would be helpful for us to lend our voice to it with a letter to the secretary? Do you think that would be helpful?
I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair, for bringing that up. I think it'd be a great move for the board. The advocacy from this board and from our fellow citizens in town with the executive branch empowers us all and empowers me in the mission we're trying to attain here. And obviously, Rep. Driscoll and Rep. Luca Oakley are trying to accomplish the same mission. We work together in conjunction with the board. And of course, I will never forget that I work for the people of this town. This roadway, Route 28 Randolph Ave, and is obviously, to say that it's incredibly dangerous is an understatement. And I've had numerous conversations with the residents who live in and around that hazardous road. And that, again, is an understatement as well. But it's, as I stated back in late October when DOT hosted a public meeting, which I believe they were woefully unprepared for. They admitted they did not conduct an impact study of Route 28 in its entirety. And I think, as you mentioned, Mr. Zulus, that we don't have the luxury of time here when you address DOT. They were woefully unprepared. I believe the meeting, from their perspective, was disastrous. They weren't ready. People who live on those side streets and in the vicinity around it, we're all well aware as public servants, people are terrified to drive off their street onto Route 28 Randolph Ave. They're terrified to have their children, their loved ones drive onto their streets, and that's not acceptable. And DOT's been way behind in addressing the problem. We've heard numerous promises. I'd say they're about 3 years behind schedule, and they still haven't looked at the road, Route 28, in its totality. And then to top it off, Governor Baker vetoes a home rule petition that would have saved lives with no explanation. So DOT's conduct has been unacceptable on this issue to me. I know it's been unacceptable for this board as well. And I'm hopeful with Secretary Fiandaca, who has a great reputation, and she was just incredibly accommodating in having an ad hoc meeting with myself. It was actually at Governor Healy swearing in, right after it wrapped up on the floor of the House of Representatives. And she was terrific, and she made a promise to me that she would come, and she heard me out in terms of just the sordid history of this road and the carnage.
We are very grateful for your initiative. Roxanne, anything?
I was just going to say, I'd like to thank you for, continuing to pursue that. And it was very evident, as you said at that meeting with the Chickatawbit discussion with DOT, that it was very short-sighted to just look at the one intersection and not look at the road in totality. So I think that if we can, have some luck with getting this new speed limit reduced, that would help immensely. And appreciate you working towards that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Musto. Back in March of 2022, when I brought Secretary Tesla up to the intersection of Chickatawbit Road, and of course we were looking at the road in its totality, and I told the Secretary back then, and of course Arthur and Mike, who were both there with me, that there were more than just a fix to a rotary here. My suggestion at the time were additional stoplights on the road, and have the stoplights not be in synchronicity with one another so that it would constantly stop the flow of traffic. And yet, the suggestions that we all threw at the Secretary that day fell on deaf ears.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments. One is recognition of the fact that our Department of Public Works yard is there. I'm there very frequently, work for the Conservation Commission, and it is arduous getting out of there. And this is a municipal responsibility, and ties directly to what you're mentioning, and it'll be important for the secretary to not only be cognizant of that, but of the additional building that's going to take place on Route 28 due to 40Bs, and what the impact of those developments are going to have on
Certainly.
the future traffic. So we should be planning not just for the status quo, what we have now, which is very dangerous, excruciatingly so, and has been for a very long time, but what we're going to need and our people are going to need, and those who pass through our town will need in the future.
Certainly, and to your point, Mr. Chair, DOT, as we mentioned just a moment ago, as I mentioned, DOT admitted they did not conduct an impact study for the entirety of the road. And certainly, the intersection has to be addressed. It's been dubbed the most dangerous intersection in the Commonwealth. But to try to address just the intersection and not the entire road is just incredulous. And I know, as I said, it's each and every street that feeds on and off of Randolph Ave, Route 28, and Chickatobit Road, and every road in the vicinity. People live in constant fear of driving on that axis of roadway. They do. And as I mentioned a moment ago, DOT has been a disaster in the prior administration on this issue. And it was exacerbated by Governor Baker's horrible decision on the way out the door not to sign the home rule petition. But again, it's been filed by myself, and I'm confident that it will enjoy great support in the state Senate. And I know Rep. Fluker Oakley and Rep. Driscoll will work with me to secure its passage.
May I ask Town Administrator, Mr. Milano, if he has any related comments from his perspective as our Town Administrator?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Just want to thank you and your staff for always being available. Hannah does a great job. She's so responsive. So it's an asset to us to have you folks working on our behalf at the State House. So we appreciate it.
I have a great chief of staff and a great team, and they enjoy working with yourself, Mr. Milano.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Zulus.
Senator, not to change the subject too much, but if the Secretary does visit us, we do have another issue, and that is the lawsuit that you're aware of with the MBTA. And so if the Secretary comes to see Chickatobit, it seems to me it's a pretty close drive over to take a look at the MBTA stairs at Adams Street Station as well. So perhaps not to diffuse that effort at all, but perhaps if she's here, we could discuss that issue as well.
Well, I'm confident Secretary Fiandaca will come with myself and take a tour of what we've been talking about. When I brought Secretary Tesler to town, I also, as you folks know, I brought Secretary Tesler to East Milton Square because that project, in terms of the timeline, was a disaster by DOT. And that was something that was something we were all extremely unhappy about, and I communicated it to Secretary Tesler on numerous occasions. I also requested that day for Secretary Tesler to come to look at the Adams Village T station, and Secretary Tesler's team declined. But that will be part of any visit to the town of Milton. Secretary Tesler also went to Route 138 with us that day. And I want to thank Chief King and Deputy Chief O'Neill, who were with us that day with Secretary Tesler. And obviously Secretary Tesler, he was extremely responsive, but that doesn't do us any good when the results aren't there. And Chief King was terrific in calibrating the budget amendments that I filed, seeking the overtime patrols for both Randolph Ave, Route 28, and Route 138 for the town of Milton. He was great in his advice, as he always is, as we all can attest to. And he calibrated what the dollars would get in terms of patrols, where we have police officers from the town of Milton. We have an excellent police department. They're strictly on those roads to write tickets and let people know that there's a presence there. So that will be happening this year on both roads.
Senator, it might be helpful if we could learn about any accountability that the MBTA has to the Department of Public Utilities, and whether or not there's a tie-in there that has an impact on the Adams Street Station as well.
I've had constant communications, or I should say many communications with the MBTA over the past few years. And of course, it's something that each and every one of us have talked about. It is one of the more frustrating issues, and quite frankly, the MBTA's performance with the refurbishment of the Dorchester-Milton-Mattapan line and the refurbishment, or lack thereof, of the Adams Street Milton Station with the stairs is a disgrace. It's been an absolute disgrace. So I'm exploring each and every option, Arthur, as to what has affected them on this. I personally think it's just strict incompetence from the top at the MBTA.
I'm pleased to hear you identify it as the Dorchester Mattapan line. I rode that for 8 years, high school, college.
I rode it as well in law school.
You know, too.
Walk right to Central
We
and
did
hop
the
on
same thing.
and take it home from Park Street,
That's right.
or from Ashmont after.
And also to recognize the fact that the Milton station is really a Milton Lower Mill station. It's both Milton and Boston. So any collaboration, participation, et cetera, that we can have from your counterpart for that area of the city of Boston might be an advantage as well.
It's been a collaborative effort. You know, I've said many times that the Milton, Mattapan, Dorchester line is an economic, it's a cultural lifeline
Sure.
for all of us. You know, as a kid, I used to hop on that trolley to go to Ashmont to go into Red Sox games as a kid. And obviously go to law school. People use it to go access their jobs, their medical appointments. So it is a cultural and economic lifeline. The T, obviously, they're in phase 1, which is the refurbishment and restoration of the cars. That phase 1 is 3 years behind schedule. And they have stubbornly refused to go to phase 2, which is the refurbishment of each and every station. Each and every station on that line desperately needs refurbishment. The most egregious of all, though, is our station in Milton on Adams Street. I mean, the stairs have been blocked off for how many years? It's getting to be almost half my lifetime, and I'm not young. So that has been a disgrace. The Milton station is the most egregious of any station on the line. And yet and I've repeatedly asked them to pivot and jump on phase 2 in light of the fact that phase 1, in terms of its timing, it's literally 3 years behind schedule. And, you know, we can't afford to wait. It's an eyesore, it's a public safety hazard, and it's a blight on the community. And each and every station needs to be refurbished, but that's the most egregious of all.
Thank you very much for
Thank
taking
you.
time to come here personally
Thank you.
to let us know the work that you've initiated and to hear from us, as well as to share the information with us.
No, it's a privilege, obviously, to work for this board, and it's a privilege to work for the town. So I enjoy being here. My father served on this board many years ago, and I greatly appreciate what you folks do and what you do for the town. And obviously, we work for the town because we love this town, and we'll never forget that we work for the people of the town. So,
Thank you, Senator.
thank you. Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, and
Have a
my
good one.
apologies for delaying
Not at all.
the addressing of your agenda. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome
Good night.
anytime,
Thank you.
Senator. Let's turn now to item number 4 on our agenda, which is a public hearing, transfer of liquor license number 00012-RS-0720 from Welch Restaurant Management LLC, DBA Abbey Park, located at 550 Adams Street, to 556 Adams Street LLC. We'll have a discussion and approval. As stated, the chair will declare this now a public hearing being open, and we'll look forward to hearing a presentation from the applicant. Nick, can we turn to you for that introduction? I believe you said he
Sure.
was going to be with us.
Yep, Mr. Welch is here. I will promote him to serve as a panelist. Just so that the board understands, this liquor license obviously has been approved and has been renewed for calendar year 2023. We received this application for a transfer close to the end of calendar year 23. We were advised by the ABCC to wait until around this time of the year to consider the transfer. If approved by the select board, it would be transmitted to the ABCC for their approval after the fact. And Mr. Welch is a panelist now.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, Mr. Welsh, for being with us.
All right, thank you for having me. I guess, do you have any questions as to what this is all about, or is it pretty clear from the filing?
We would welcome your giving us an overview, and then we can
Okay.
open up to questions and comments from the public.
Okay, well, it's basically an internal transaction. It's, both companies are owned and operated by by the same, it will be owned and operated by the same group. Nothing's going to change as far as operations or concept or anything like that is concerned. It's basically the members of the 556 group is purchasing the membership at Welch, which is Abbey Park. So it's as far as the way that the restaurants run, nothing's going to change.
Thank you. At this time, we'll ask for questions or comments from the public. We have none present in the room. We will see, Mr. Volano, if there are any hands raised.
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Questions, comments from members of the Select Board? Mr. Zulus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Vance, just to put a point on it, it appears that the owners of Welch Restaurant Management, which is the current holder, are selling their interest in that to 556 Adams Street. So you're gonna have some of the same owners and a couple of different owners. Is that
Right.
essentially what's happening?
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And there's basically one member from the original Welch group is dropping out, and then the members at 556, which is the Novara group, is opted to take that position.
Thank you, Vance.
So it's going to be run. I mean, it's the same breakdown as far as ownership goes.
Thank you. This time, I'd ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
A second, please.
I will second that.
Thank you, Ms. Bristow. A roll call vote to close the public hearing. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. We have a proposed motion. Would somebody like to make the motion?
I'll move to approve the transfer of liquor license number 00012-RS 0720 from Welch Restaurant Management LLC, DBA Abbey Park, located at 550 Adams Street, to 556 Adams Street LLC.
For a second.
I will second that.
Ms. Musto, thank you. Any discussion?
I just got the LLC.
I know you're aware of the background.
I know
of
what's
this,
going on, yes, so
we will call
I read
you
the
for
agenda too.
part of the vote, too. All in favor of the motion? There being no discussion, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
As read?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And I'll say good night.
Good night, and thank you for being with us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Item number 5 is discussion, approval, agreement for maintenance of the existing deck at 5 Woodward Court, Milton, Mass. Woodward Court being located in East Milton, approximate to
St.
recently
Agatha's.
acquired St. Agatha property for the proposed East Milton Fire Station. Mr. Freytag, could you join us for this item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'll add that Attorney McKettrick, who represents the homeowners, is in the attendee pool and has raised her hand if you'd like to entertain her.
Happy to listen to Attorney McKettrick anytime. Mr. Freytag, any overview that you would like to use in the way of an introduction?
You know, it might be better to hear from Attorney McKettrick first.
Okay, thank you.
Good
Marion,
evening.
can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you. I'm Marian McKettrick, and I represent Jose Serpa and Marcia Andrade Serpa. They may be here tonight as well. I don't know if they have anything they want to say, but just very briefly to explain to the board, the reason you have this agreement in front of you tonight is that the Serpas are working on a rather long process to see if they can get approvals and authorizations to keep a deck that has been constructed in the rear of their home where it is. The deck is too close to the lot line, so they'll need a variance. I became involved when this issue came up and they needed to apply for the variance. But in order to do that, they had to have a survey plan done. And when they did the survey plan, they found that running along the back of their property is a water and sewer easement that belongs to the town. And they also found that the deck is slightly over the lot line. So they are working on trying to reach agreement with the Archdiocese of Boston to be able to maintain the deck in that place. They will have to apply to the Board of Appeals for a zoning variance. But all of this is going to take some time, and it already has taken a good deal of time. So I met with the town engineer and Marina Fernandez, and we worked on, she was kind enough to suggest that we could have a temporary agreement, which may become a longer-term agreement, to keep the deck in place at least for now, but to allow the town to have it removed immediately if they need to do maintenance work on these sewer and water lines. And so that's the text of the agreement that you have in front of you. And I know that Kevin Freitag has worked on this and made edits, and the result is the document that you see. The Serpas have both signed the agreement, so I'm just here tonight to ask the board if they have questions, understand the nature of the agreement, and whether they would be willing to sign this agreement as well. And then it will be in place, at least for the time being. If the Serpas determine that they cannot obtain the 2 approvals that I mentioned, then they will not be able to keep the deck where it is. So this is all kind of, we don't know what the result will be long-term, but it provides an avenue for them to work on their problem and to keep the deck where it is for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Attorney McKettrick? Mr. Wells?
Question. How large is the deck, Mayor? How big a deck?
Well, you should have, you don't have the
I
drawing.
don't have it. I don't have it with me, so that's why I'm, is it significant?
It's a fairly large deck. It wraps around the edge of the house. It's in the back. Let me just give a little background. The Serpas have lived in this house for more than 10 years, and there was a deck already in the back of the house. It's only about a foot off the ground. It's a low deck, but a deck is a structure, so you do get involved with zoning issues with a deck. So they replaced their existing deck, but the new deck is larger. It's at least, I would imagine, 20 feet back because it extends just beyond the back lot line. There's a very narrow backyard for this house, and there's a sewer easement right in the middle of it.
And that's why we're here, Kevin, right?
Yeah, if the Serpas are here, they could probably give you an
No, I'm good.
approximate.
I'm good. I get it. I thought,
Okay.
but, so this is really unrelated to the land purchase. This is more about the sewer easement. Okay, I get it.
This has nothing to do with the, although we did have to make sure there wasn't any connection between the little edge that goes over the back of their lot line and the new fire station and the town's purchase of that, and there is none. Okay. It's not in the same place. It's not too far away, and it is a very small area of land as well. Anyway, that's the Archdiocese of Boston. They'll make a decision about that. We'll have to see what happens.
Any other questions? You good?
I'm good.
Take any comment?
No, I think Attorney McKettrick summed it up pretty well. My office has reviewed this document. As Mayor McKettrick mentioned, we made some edits. It appears that the town will have the ability to access that sewer line.
Right.
It won't be, in any way prohibited from doing so. That's the main objective here, is to make sure that our access is not in any way restricted, and we're content that it is not. So my office is fine with it.
Thank you. Marcel?
Just a quick question. So if we needed to access anything and any part of that deck needed to be pulled up or anything, is that on the homeowner to do that? Or is that?
It is.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Well, we tried to address that in the agreement, but in discussion as well, my understanding at least is that if just a very small portion of the deck had to be pulled up, a board, something like that, yes, it would be the homeowner's responsibility. If the town had to do it on an emergency basis, it could go right in and do it, but it would notify the homeowner.
Okay.
If a large construction project is necessary, they have to dig up all these pipes, the entire deck is going to have to be taken down, and it will be taken down either at the homeowner's expense or by the homeowner, depending on the amount of time available to do that work. Some maintenance work can be done on these pipes without disturbing the deck. We're all very hopeful that in the short term, that's what's going to happen if anything has to be done, but we'll have to see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You want a motion, Mr. Chair?
Please.
So I'll make a motion to approve the agreement for maintenance of the existing deck at number 5 Woodward Court, Milton, Massachusetts.
Is there a second, please?
I will second that.
Musto seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 6, discussion approval, memorandum of understanding and license agreement for wetland replication activity on town-owned land located on Canton Avenue, map K, lot 2, block 1A, related to the Winter Valley Residences Building 6 project. You may remember that we had an information item on this at a recent select board meeting, and this is a follow-up to that. Mr. Freitag, can we turn to you at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chair. That's right. This was an agreement, a license and an agreement that was spoken about at the last select board meeting, I believe. Attorney Cochran, is Attorney Cochran with us?
Ned Cochran, correct. Attorney Cochran.
Represents
He is here, yep.
Winter Valley on this agreement. And basically what it does is it allows Winter Valley to perform the relocation of this wetland resource that is going to be disturbed by the building at Winter Valley to create this 6th building at Winter Valley, and basically relocate and recreate that resource area on town-owned property. And all that the license agreement does is it sort of pulls together all of the various agreements and orders and site plan approvals from various town boards, references all of those and says, yes, the Winter Valley Residence Inc. has the ability now to go onto the town's property, not only recreate this resource area, but also go back to the resource area from time to time and maintain it, and also evaluate and report on its condition to the town. So this agreement basically is just the final step in allowing Winter Valley to be able to complete this process of relocating this resource area from the Winter Valley property to the town's property. I've been over this agreement a number of times. I know Attorney Cochran has as well. I feel that it's in good form and should be approved by the select board.
Thank you. Mr. Milano?
He is here if you wanted to hear from him, unless Kevin has covered it, so.
Okay.
May I make a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I just wanted to add if I...
No, it's...
Well, make the motion, then
All right, so I'll make a motion for the
discussion.
purpose of discussion. So I'll make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding and license agreement for wetland replication activity on town-owned land located on Canton Avenue, map K, lot 2, block 1A, related to the Winter Valley Residence Building 6 project.
Is there a second?
We'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. It is moved and seconded. Open for discussion. I just wanted to add that the replication came from a recommendation by Milton's conservation agent, and this has been unanimously, if I recall correctly, approved by the Milton Conservation Commission, just so that you have that information as well. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you very kindly. Item number 7, discussion approval, recommendation of the planning board draft action plan for the MBTA communities law. And I believe Mr. Zawinski is going to be with us.
Yep. Yes, he will be joining us momentarily.
Thank you, Mr. Freitag.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you hopefully everyone remembers way back when in early 2022 when I first came to this board to brief you all on the MBTA community zoning law that was passed as part of a broader economic development bill in 2021 by the state legislature. Just to very quickly recap, the law requires municipalities that have MBTA service to create a by right multifamily zoning district, generally within the vicinity of transit. And there are obviously many more detailed requirements and guidelines than that. But understanding that the zoning process is very long and that you need to give towns the ability to work through this very consequential and impactful mandate from the state. The state set up multiple, what they call interim compliance steps. The first one in 2022 was simply a briefing on the new law and the guidelines from DHCD to the select board. That makes us compliant with the law for 2022. Compliance in 2023 comes via the submission of this form that DHCD put together called an action plan for MBTA communities. And, you know, what this form is really very simple questions about how we're thinking about our implementation of the MBTA communities legislation. Pretty easy stuff in terms of just, you know, who are you, what community are you, what MBTA stations do you have, you know, contact information. I'm just kind of leafing through it right now as we speak.
Found it. I left it in here, and she emailed me and told me she grabbed it, and it's in here. But it's got all my pens and everything. I thought that was it. I mean, it looks just like it. But
I think Member Wells has his mic still on. I don't know if he's at the table.
All right, I did.
Sorry, I'm not used to being back in person, Mr. Zawinski.
I did that last night during a Conservation Commission meeting, even after I'd hit the mute button, it didn't work.
And that could have been high comedy at the select board.
Just go back home, get on my couch, go back log on Zoom, and just do what I know.
There are a couple elements of the action plan that require a little bit of thought and deliberation and decision making, you know, about how we're going to approach this law. And the recommended route that I recommended to the select board that we take was work through the planning board to kind of go through some of, you know, what I'll consider to be the substantive content of the plan. It's going to be zoning. Zoning, you know, tends to be in the realm of the planning board. It's, you know, whatever we put together is going to eventually have to have a public hearing in front of the planning board. But, you know, because it's such a consequential law for the town, because the consequences of compliance are town-wide and not just sort of relegated to planning issues, you know, the select board really does need to be involved, you know, in our compliance strategy. And so I've been working with the planning board for the last several months in terms of, you know, populating this form with the information that DHCD has asked for. And I'm here tonight to, you know, see if the select board has any questions about what we're submitting, about what the implications are of us submitting, what the next steps are after the action plan is submitted, and ultimately to give me the authorization to submit this to DHCD. The information in the form is, I'll just by way of summary, very intentionally broad. The questions themselves are broad and the answers are broad, you know, very specifically because, you know, we have not had the chance to do the level of community outreach, analysis, and quite frankly, planning that would, you know, that is necessary for this. And I think the action plan contemplates that. DHCD is not looking for, you know, something on a silver platter that, you know, we're eventually going to bring to town meeting. What they really want is just evidence that we're thinking critically about this and that we have a strategy for, you know, the very complicated and complex process of passing zoning. You know, some of the, you know, actual kind of substantive elements of this are, you know, a description of the strategies, goals, and objectives that we've deployed around housing planning, you know, so far. And, you know, we've done a lot more than you think, you know, in terms of passing the Milton Village zoning, in terms of passing the Community Preservation Act, in terms of, you know, while there weren't our choice, we did a very diligent job of shepherding 7 40B applications through the Board of Appeals process. And so, you know, the plan outlines that. The other thing that the plan asks for is, you know, where are we thinking of locating potential multifamily zoning districts? And again, it's a broad question and we provided a broad answer. And it's quite frankly, you know, our number one priority is figuring out how to make it work within the transit area that's defined in the statute. So within a half a mile of our transit stations, including Mattapan Station, which has a half-mile radius that creeps into Milton. We also put into the mix as a potential, location to think about is some of the state-owned land on Granite Ave. The state DPW yard and park and ride lot, which, over several, years has, been dangled by the state as a potential, disposition site. Could be appropriate for some more dense housing. The answer that we put on this form, though, does stipulate that, all of this is subject to change based on the analysis, the research, and the outreach that we do, in the coming year. We're required to locate a portion of this district in the transit area. There's no question about that. But it is going to become a question for the town. Do we want to concentrate it in that area? Do we want to put that, part of the district elsewhere in town? It's a serious question, and I wasn't going to attempt to answer it on behalf of the town at this early stage. And the final element of this plan is a timeline, and what DHCD wants to know is, when are you going to do your community outreach? When are you going to bring on any outside consultants that are going to assist you? When are you going to have a public hearing at the planning board? When are you going to go to town meeting? The timeline is very tricky in the sense that as a rapid transit community, and there are only a handful of those, Cambridge, Somerville, Brookline, Newton, Revere, Quincy, really the ones that have that rapid transit service. We actually have a more accelerated timeline for complying with the law. We're obligated to pass zoning by the end of calendar year 2023. The vast majority of MBTA communities actually have until the end of 2024 to do this. So, coming up with a timeline for getting to town meeting with honestly the biggest piece of zoning that the town has ever done since 1938, it's an ambitious timeline. And what I really did was, took a look at, if we had a December 23 special town meeting, backing into the relevant dates in terms of a public hearing at the planning board, in terms of, the necessary time to do the research and analysis, to get into, that December 23 special town meeting. The reason I did that is because I didn't want to be submitting a form to DHCD that right off the bat said, we're going to miss our deadline for compliance. That's the logic behind that. But as a practical matter, this is going to take us a long time to get right. And, I don't have a problem saying that it's an ambitious timeline and timeline that very likely, may extend into 2024. But that's what we filled in on the form. Because we wanted to show DHCD that we're taking this seriously and that there's a potential pathway to, compliance by the deadline. Everything I've heard from DHCD as a part of this process has led me to believe that they think that many towns are going to take multiple town meetings to get these things done. They recognize how consequential and monumental it is for many towns. But, and I think they understand that. They have presented this action plan to us as, again, just a demonstration that we, we're thinking about this, that we have, a guiding, set of actions to take in the coming year. I don't think that we're going to get any penalty or punishment or any kind of reprimand if we deviate from this plan based on conditions that come up in the course of outreach and research and analysis. Ultimately, the next deadline is the final deadline, and we'll either comply by the deadline or we won't. And so, getting this plan in is a step, and then we can move on to, what I'll call, the actual real work of getting this stuff done. So happy to take any questions about the action plan or the process moving forward. But again, my hope would be to get an authorization to submit this to DHCD by the deadline of January 31st.
Thank you, Mr. Zawinski. Any questions for our town planner? And
I'm worried. Well, Mr. Chair, if I just, so Tim, you and I have talked about this a lot, and you said it and you articulated in your comments, this is the largest zoning proposal that you've ever handled, or that this town has faced since 1938. My concerns is, I just look realistically at the challenges that this town is facing now, and everything from trying to find a location for a new school to tonight we're going to approve a new committee on sustainability and climate change, and without us even discussing this yet, we've probably gotten 20 letters from residents just supporting this, which to me, and one of the things you and I have talked about is just how many of the remaining open space plots of land in this town that you've had to look at to potentially change the zoning to go from being open space or passive to potentially being housing in the future. And when we talk about this town, about overcrowding in schools, traffic congestion, trying to commit to sustainability and deferring contributions to climate change, I just don't know. This is really a massive, massive thing. I think, imagine if someone said to the state, okay, we have this housing problem, let's take 6 square acres of the 5,500 square acres of the Blue Hills Reservation. There'd be World War III. I mean, you wouldn't, but yet we see the struggles that residents in this town have just trying to build a pickleball court. There isn't enough room in this town to build another park. We can't find parking just to put for Andrew's Playground, which has got 20 pounds of activities in a 5-pound potato bag right now as it is. I really, really, what does this do to the overcrowding? Look, never mind the 40 Bs that we've gone through the ZBA process with and dealt with. What does potentially 2,000 new housing units in this community do to everything from traffic congestion to schools to the way Milton has looked? And to quote one longtime resident who's called me the other day in this, said suddenly Milton, which is always, and God bless him, I bring him up all the time, John Cronin, how special Milton was. Suddenly we're not special anymore. So that's the part in a nutshell that I understand, where this came from and what you're facing, but I really do worry. This is massive with a capital M all the way across.
So, Member Wells, what I'll say is you haven't raised any comment that hasn't already been raised a planning board. So, the planning board is thinking about this. My department has secured at least $70,000 worth of technical assistance grant funding from the state to procure consultants to do not just the work of drafting up zoning, which ultimately is going to be a town meeting decision. To come up with zoning that town meeting feels works best for the town, but also to bring in experts to do that municipal impact analysis, to sort of test the impacts on the schools, on our infrastructure, on our open spaces, of a reasonable expectation of build out. The one thing that I'll say, without getting into too many weeds, is that the MBTA communities law is a zoning mandate. It's not a production mandate. And it sometimes sounds like a distinction without a difference, but all we have to do is allow for a certain number of units to be built in a by right fashion. We've done this before. In 1938, we passed zoning that went from...
I don't even think you were there.
You sit by that much, Richard.
I just as a little bit of a, there's a lot of historians in Milton, but, I've been doing a little bit of research myself. The zoning before 1938 was, 5,000 square foot lots everywhere. It was one zone. You could build a 5,000 square foot lot anywhere in town. The town reevaluated that structure and came up with the system that we generally see today. There's a C zone, which is 7,500 square feet. The B is 20,000. The A is 40,000. The double A is 80,000. That came later. And then there are another, a handful of districts. But at the time, when this zoning was coming out, they were projecting 60 to 70,000 Miltonians under a full build-out scheme under the 1938 zoning. Now, obviously, that never happened. Our population has stayed, relatively stable. There were large increases at the beginning of the century, and smaller increases over the years. But we've yet to have full build-out on the 1938 zoning. Now, obviously, it's a different real estate market. It's a different economy. It's a different world, in 2023 compared to 1938. But the principle is that when you pass zoning, it's an almost a guarantee that you're not going to see full build out. And if you ever did, it would be over a time scale that is so vast as to ideally give you the opportunity to absorb those impacts and to kind of change course and do what you need to do. Now, that's cold comfort for folks who see a lot of value in the way that the town is now. But I think we need to look at it from the standpoint of what is a reasonable expectation of build out instead of just looking at that bottom line number of what we're required to zone for. But just to get back to the original point, you're raising a lot of really important issues. The planning board and my department are kind of taking steps to study those issues so that town meeting and the planning board and everyone involved in this process has as much information about what the implications are going to be as possible.
Thank you, Tim. Any other questions for Tim? Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tim, two questions about the application. In section 2.1A, where we mention the comprehensive permits, do you think we need to mention that they are subject to litigation, or do you think it's sufficient just to say that we approve those permits? Do you think that's sufficient, or should we mention that they are subject to litigation?
What's the rationale, Mike, on that, on being subject to litigation? Just
to be fully forthcoming.
Sorry, I was muted there. From the state standpoint, the town has done everything that 40B expects us to do. Okay. We've taken in all the applications that have come in. We've engaged with them in a good faith way. We have done our best to mitigate the most harmful impacts while balancing the regional need for affordable housing. So, the town is not a party to any of those appeals. Yeah. So, if they have follow-up questions about what the kind of reasonable expectation of if and when those projects get built, happy to answer those questions. But we have approved hundreds of multifamily units in the town of Milton over the last 2 years. That's what 40B is about, and we've done our job in that regard.
Fair enough. And items 3.1C and 3.1D, where we mentioned the Granite Avenue site, can you just very briefly, tell me how that decision was made, how you came to that site, mentioning solely that site? Or how the planning board, and again, just very briefly.
Yeah, so, as I said earlier, we have to zone within the transit area. And, it becomes a choice for the town of, do we want to put multifamily in other parts of town? And so I had brought to the planning board in an initial iteration a number of sites that kind of share the characteristics of being relatively large compared to an individual house lot, and non-residential in nature. We could conceivably draw a zoning district anywhere in town, but I think there's a desire for people to put density in places where it is going to be not disruptive to the existing kind of physical character. So there were other sites that we looked at that we thought maybe we can still talk about them as the year goes by, but in an initial kind of way, let's stick with these. The Granite Ave sites, one of them, we did, back in 2013, 2014, I think the last time that the state DPW yard was kind of being considered for disposition, the town commissioned a Granite Ave study group to kind of study, what are some good options for redevelopment on this site. So it's been an area that's had some planning done on it, and that state land is also referenced in our housing production plan as a potential housing site. So that's why we picked it, because of all the sites in town, it's one that is kind of out of the way, commercial in nature, large and contiguous, and has a little bit of previous planning behind it.
Thank you, Tim.
Roxanne?
Thank you. I just had a couple of comments and a couple of questions. On the form, you listed the different areas. Is that something going forward? It sounds like you can we look at that and change it? You're not locked into what you submitted. I just want to ask you that first. The other thing I noticed, we keep saying it's a rapid transit community, and I'm wondering if that's been looked at all, because we have the trolley, but I didn't know that that was rapid transit. And that really changes the definition of how many units you would need. That's a second question. Another question I have is, I'd like to know about who's going to be able to do a cost-benefit analysis on this. Because, with this number of units, in terms, I think this was already mentioned by several people, but in terms of specifically police, fire, roads and DPW and schools, what will the impact be in dollars and cents with that, with adhering to this? Timeline, again, I know you addressed this a little bit in next steps. Wondering also if you've spoken with other communities, and specifically, if so, which communities and who at those communities you've spoken with, because I would imagine that a lot of communities are facing the same issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. And I'll try to remember your questions, but you might need to help me. So the first one on the sort of the locations that are called out in the plan, those are, again, we've put some thought into it, and we want to demonstrate to DHCD that we've put some thought into it. We have also told them there's a much more thought to be put into this. And so they have communicated to towns that this is a rough draft, and there's an acknowledgement that locations may change, ideas may change, and so I think we're well within our rights to deviate from this plan as long as it leads in the direction of compliance. And there's a lot of ways to get to compliance, and so I think it's fine. There's certain requirements that are non-negotiable. You have to have at least 50% of the district in the transit area. But outside of that, it's all kind of up for discussion and debate. So I don't think that'll be an issue. I already forgot your second question. I apologize.
I think you asked, one of the questions that she asked you was about high-speed transit. I think you might want to describe it, how
Yeah.
our trolley line is included as part of the high-speed rail system, even though people look at it as a historic, pretty trolley system.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and the Mattapan trolley and what the very technical and kind of narrow answer is that these are classifications that are generated by the T, and so the T looks at is it train tracks or is it on the road? It's the difference between a train and a bus. I know this all sounds like busy town, but it's how you have to think about it. And then there's a difference between commuter rail and rapid transit. There's a lot of things that go into it. The headways, the Mattapan trolley is kind of maybe less frequent than the heavy rail red line, but it's more frequent than the commuter rail. It may resemble a bus in its kind of shape and capacity, but it's on tracks. So it really does exist in what I'll call a kind of little kind of weird gray zone. I don't know how much that is up for negotiation. This is something that has been brought up at the planning board. What I will say is if the select board feels strongly enough about it, it may be worth writing a letter to the state to say, look, we think that we're being lumped in with the blue line, the red line, and the orange line. It's not quite, it's more than a bus, but it's less than a subway. So, we think there should be some consideration there. we raised that point in our initial comment letter when the guidelines first came out. No response from DHCD or the T on that. I don't think anyone got an individual response. But I think the fact remains that, and the other thing that I'll say is, to Senator Timilty's comments earlier, I mean, the trolley needs work. It absolutely does. If the T is going to be successful in its Mattapan Trolley Transformation Project, we'll get better transit out of that. But I do think, if the board feels strongly enough about it, it may be worth kind of, addressing that with the state and saying, like, we feel that maybe, there should be the problem becomes that they're trying to create broad classifications for many communities. And really, what we would be asking for is an individual, unique exception, which is fine. It's a unique line, and it only affects Milton. The city of Boston isn't a part of the MBTA community's legislation, but I don't know what their appetite is towards making those types of exceptions. But I'd be happy to collaborate with the board on a letter to the state if that's something that you feel strongly about. The other question about
Tim,
the cost
can I
benefit.
jump in, Roxanne?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you mind on this topic? Just a minute on the trolley issue?
I think he's given us information on that.
I thought he was going on to another point.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Tim, having lived in Newton with a trolley that all but went through the backyard of the house I lived in for 2 years, have we talked with any of the other trolley communities to see what positions they are taking on this with the state?
I have not. So, I mean, we'd be talking about Brookline and Newton. I can reach out to my counterparts over there. Those are communities that are a little bit different than Milton, just in terms of their existing housing stock, and again, the Green Line is a little bit different than the other lines as well. So I can definitely make a note to reach out to those communities, and I think and to Ms. Musto's other question about other types of communities, I really do think that those are the two counterparts that are going to be facing the most similar types of issues than Milton. Even though Brookline and Newton, don't look like Milton in terms of population, in terms of kind of built environment and everything like that. But those are the other two rapid transit communities that are kind of directly adjacent to the city of Boston. We are the closest communities to the city that are outside of the city. And so while there may be peer communities, elsewhere in Norfolk County or kind of farther afield in the MBTA area, those communities are not facing the same types of issues we have in terms of our proximity to the city. And I think the attention that we're going to get regarding that, the T, DHCD, the legislature, the administration are interested in people, allowing as many people to live as close to the core as possible. And that means Milton. It means Brookline, it means Newton, it means Chelsea, it means Everett. And so I'll make it a point to reach out to my counterparts in those two communities and kind of see, if we can sharpen our pencils and see if there are any common issues that we're dealing with.
That would be very helpful. And part of the thinking on this is vis-a-vis the letter that's suggested, and what those communities are going to do may give us some additional leverage rather than having us standing alone.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
You can't get any closer to Boston than is Brookline than are we. I mean,
yeah.
Boston tried to absorb Brookline once, and Brookline turned them down.
As we are also the largest, 13.5 square miles of border. Nobody, we are the largest geographic border to the city of Boston. No other community has a bigger, think about how many neighborhoods of the city of Boston transist. When you go south from the city, there's only 6 bridges that leave the city of Boston. 5 of them are in Milton. 1 is in Quincy. They have the Neponset Bridge, we have the other 5.
So we have some additional information to gather, and then we can decide what to do after that. But the letter is an excellent idea. Roxanne, thank you for letting me jump in.
I think Ms. Musso had one last question just about the cost-benefit analysis. So
Just before-
we're working. Oops, sorry, Mike.
I was just going to say, before we go to that, I think we need to think about whether if there is a distinction from the trolleys, and I think there is. I think there's
I
an
do
easy
too.
distinction. A trolley is not a bus, it's not a subway. I think there's a distinction there to be drawn. I think you also need to think about, Tim, whether there's a distinction to be drawn between our trolleys and Newton and Brookline's trolleys, right? Maybe we are unique. Maybe our trolleys are unique, and that in the condition of them, and the population they serve, and the way they provide transportation. So as I think about it, and obviously we need to do a lot more analysis, but I think these trolleys are different character than the ones even in Brookline and Newton. So then the question is, do you want to be affiliated with Brookline and Newton, right? Maybe, or maybe you don't, right?
That's why we get the information to make a decision.
So they have LRVs, and we have the presidentials, which are the only presidential cars left running in the United States of America. And 5 years ago, absent the work of Linda Dorsina, Dan Cullinane, and several others, it was the T's intention to convert that entire line to buses and abolish those trolleys. And there was so much, there was the historic aspect of it as well. And had the T had their way, these trolleys wouldn't even run today. Which, again, shows it is unique. And our trolleys run completely different than those LRVs do in the city of Newton and the town of Brookline.
I think it's worth investigating and going from there.
They're tandem vehicles.
Yeah, I was just waiting.
We'll find out. Thank you.
I was just waiting
Allow
for
me
Mr. Jewins
to jump in.
to just answer my final question.
Please.
Yeah, so we've been working with the planning board. So I mentioned that we've gotten, technical assistance grant funding from the state in kind of two different buckets. One is for a consultant, to do, kind of the nitty-gritty work of drawing boundaries and helping us come up with dimensional requirements so that people have something to actually sink their teeth into, in this conversation. The other larger kind of pot of money is specifically for, and this is a planning board priority, to do that municipal impact analysis of, okay, what is a reasonable expectation for build out? How is that going to affect staffing levels, response time for emergency services, infrastructure, roads, schools, but again, also to look at, the other side of the ledger in terms of, potential new tax revenue, from higher intensity uses than just single family, houses. These types of analyses are done all the time. In many cases, they're done for kind of discrete building projects. So, zoning is a little bit different because, it's one thing, I was the project manager at the BPDA for the review of the Suffolk Downs project in East Boston. That is a huge project, but, everyone knows how many units it's going to be and everyone knows what the timetable is going to be, as long as the developer, does everything the way that they're supposed to do. And you can sort of pin down by X year, there's going to be Y number of new units and whatever. With zoning, it's a little bit different because, as I said earlier, it's a zoning mandate, not a production mandate. And so, it's, while not likely, it's, possible that not a single new unit gets built ever, for whatever reason. It's probably not going to happen, but that's the way zoning works. Each individual property owner is free to, exercise their rights under the zoning. And so it becomes a little bit trickier to kind of game out, what is the timeline we're looking at and what is a reasonable expectation for build out. But those are knowable, things. It's a little bit of a trickier analysis, but, we're going to put a solicitation out there to get, firms to give us proposals for that work. I would be happy to, fold the select board into that conversation. I think the planning board is particularly interested in hearing from the town administrator about his thoughts, regarding, things that are under his jurisdiction in terms of town administration. So we're not quite ready to put that out there yet, but when we are, we'll make sure that the select board is involved to the extent that that the select board wants to be involved, because again, this is a kind of an all hands on deck effort, And these are going to be issues that affect, things in your jurisdiction as well. So we will definitely keep you posted on that, as it's going on.
If we can, if it's all right.
Thank you. Do you have what you?
Thank you.
Aaron, welcome. Have you had a chance to hear much of this, and did you have any question?
I was able to catch the part where Mr. Zulus was discussing our comparison with, I think he said Newton and Brookline, but I don't have anything to add to the discussion because I just got here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, we have before us a motion. We've been asked to approve the action plan.
I'll move to approve the recommendation of the planning board to approve the action plan for the MBT communities and authorize the town administrator to submit the action plan.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
One final comment, Mr. Chair, is that Mr. Zawinski refers to 1938. In 1938, 93 had not even been conceived. And we look at, and I refer back to my own father who came on this police department in 49, was nothing impacted this town from a negative point of view, traffic-wise, as we see every day today, than putting 93 right through the middle of East Milton. And I just think about, as I said earlier, just all the issues that we deal with, to the point that Mr. Zula said that, the trolley is not a high-speed. We didn't get a high-speed lane, but we got 93 north right through the center of this town. And I am going to vote yes, but with consternation. Consternation.
I'll just add on the discussion about the differences in the trolleys that we want to look at the lines in Newton because the one that ran through almost the house that I lived in was a single carrier, just like at
like we have now. That's
exactly.
The presidentials, yeah.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to add a comment. Ms. Musto, you had mentioned other communities. I was at our regional town administrator meeting today with our counterparts across Norfolk County. There are about, I'd say, 10 to 15 town administrators in the meeting. The topic was MBTA community zoning. We had a presentation from the Dedham town planner. They're probably about 6 months ahead of us where they actually already have zoning ready to go to town meeting. But the conversation was much of what we've heard tonight, the concerns that different communities had, ways to raise them to DHCD and to legislators. It's an interesting group because 3 of the communities were Rentham, Medway, and Medfield, who don't have MBTA service at all, but are subject to this. And they're complaining about 750 units, which I don't think some of us had much sympathy for. But everybody is going through is going through the process just like we are. They're all submitting these action plans. I think they're all ready for this next step to start talking about what this actually might mean and having some of those cost-benefit conversations. But I think, broadly speaking, communities are going to go through this action plan stage and really dive into it. That's the sense that I got from the room. So I just wanted to share that in terms of communities around us in Norfolk County.
Thank you.
And thank you for being at that meeting. So it's been moved and seconded. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Need to get Evan.
And me, I said yes.
Okay.
Things have changed. Things have changed.
We'll have to now go a roll call vote
What's
because
changed?
you are hybrid.
Because you came hybrid.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
you guys.
So I'll do the roll call. Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. We had so
Kevin
much
was
fun
here.
earlier.
We'll be nullifying the rest of tonight's meeting.
Next item, discussion approval contract amendment with, and I'll try and pronounce this correctly, Rauhaus, Friedenfeld and Associates for the Animal Shelter Project, and we heard a little bit about this previously. Tim, can you succinctly walk us through this?
Very succinct. Rauhaus, Friedenfeld and Associates has been our architect from the word go. We currently have them under contract. There's been several addendums to that contract. We had the project from the designer standpoint is broken into several phases. The remaining phases on the contract are kind of assistance with the bid process, which is currently underway, and then construction administration. We have somewhere in the realm of $35,000 in the bank associated with paying that contract. But because we are in a position of reconsidering the construction method and reconsidering the program and the size of the building, our project manager felt that it would be necessary to do a fourth addendum to the contract to reflect the different types of tasks that the architect is going to have to be tasked with for a modular project. And so those amendments are in this addendum. It reflects the new proposed size of the building and some of those additional tasks, relative to putting together the RFP and then working with a modular builder. The amount of the contract is well within the money that we have in the bank for what we thought we were going to pay the architect for the previous addendum. So there's no additional infusion of cash from the Animal League or from the town. This is just to kind of clean up the contract and give the designer clear marching orders under the new RFP, which you'll hopefully be seeing in a few weeks.
Thank you.
This is Milton Animal League money, correct? This is not town money. Right, Tim? This is out of the Milton Animal League's fund?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
So we have a proposed
I just wanted to underscore that no one is putting any more money into this element of the project.
There's a motion on the floor?
There is?
There is an,
Not yet. I don't think we do. I'll make a motion to, I'll make a motion to amend the contract with Row House Friedenfeld and Associates for the Animal Shelter Project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I meant to say, is there a motion on the floor? Not there is a motion on the floor. Second?
no, a second over here. I'll just add a friendly amendment to authorize the town administrator to sign on behalf of the select board.
Good idea. Can we make that, put that into standard language?
Motion has been made and seconded.
It has.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you. Item number 9, we turn to discussion, update, approval, special town meeting, February 13th, 2023. Mr. Milano, can we turn to you, please?
Sure. Thank you. We are making our way towards the February 13th special town meeting. We have for your approval tonight the index screening page and warrant. I included them in your materials. Article 1 is as drafted. It was voted favorably by the warrant committee last week. Article 1 is related to the town clerk's office and ability to be closed on Saturdays. When it comes to the last day to register to vote, they will be open full days on Fridays instead. Article 2 is to change the treasurer-collector position from an elected one to an appointed one. Again, that was also supported favorably by the warrant committee last week. There was one vote in opposition to that, just so the board members are aware. Thirdly is Article 3 related to the proposed potential purchase of the convent at Fontbonne. As the board is aware, we're still working on that with the Congregation of Sisters of St. Joseph. The warrant committee is meeting this evening again. Sean O'Rourke was there to check back in with them. My understanding is that the warrant committee will not have a recommendation on this article and will note as such in the warrant, so town meeting members understand. Mr. Humphreys has indicated that he'll provide context as to the deliberations that the warrant committee did have up to this point, and that that we are hopeful to have something for everybody well in advance of town meeting. I did want to raise 2 points about Article 3 based on comments that we heard at the warrant committee. The first, they were both about the article itself. The first was about the reference. The article reads, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to acquire by purchase, eminent domain, or otherwise a portion of the property located at 930 Brook Road, and so on. A couple of the comments we heard a few times by several warrant committee members was why the reference to eminent domain. So I'd ask Attorney Freitag to address that.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. So that's just consistent with the way that Milton has always done it. It always leaves room in the article for those possibilities, even where it has no intention whatsoever of doing that. It doesn't have to be there, but it's certainly always been there in the past. And I think that there have been from time to time maybe some other issues that have come up regarding the transfer of title, and there may have been, some thought that if we had that eminent domain language, it might cover any issues unexpectedly that might pop up, but it doesn't have to be there. So if the board wanted to take it out, it could. If the warrant committee wanted to make a recommendation to authorize the select board to have less authority than what's in the article, in other words, just the authority to purchase and not the authority to take by eminent domain, the warrant committee could certainly make such a recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Freitag. And Mr. Milano, thank you for your work with the warrant committee this past,
Of course.
2 weeks.
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
No, I'm just, I heard the comment, I was there listening. Would you agree that it was that person it was like an inquisition, like why is it in there versus, I didn't think that they necessarily thought it had to be out of there. So my thought is, if you think we should keep it, I'd be inclined to keep it. I think they saw the language, which was like, why was this here? It was more of an inquiry than it was, get it out.
I think it's worked so far for Milton. Every article, including the most recent purchase of the fire
St.
station
Agatha's,
property,
yes.
had this language in it, and that was because the purchase article before that had the same language in it. We've just always used it, so I would recommend keeping it.
You agree with that over there, Consigliere?
So, look, the nature of our form of government
I agree.
is, we're slow as it is. If we had to have another town meeting
I agree.
to do an eminent domain for, a 5 by 12 area of property, if in order to clean something up, I think that would be just unnecessary. So I think it allows us to act
If we have to.
if we have to.
That's right.
I see it as 2 ways. One is consistency, as you cited, and the second one is a safety net.
I just have a quick question. If we do this on this particular article, going forward, if there's some other thing that comes before us, are we going to revisit that if it has the same language? I mean, does every town do this? Do all agreements in the different surrounding towns, do they all put the eminent domain in? Just curious about that. I mean, I think that sometimes neighbors of some of the properties, they do have concerns. Like some people have asked me about that with just in general, like if they neighbor one of the things that, like this property or another property, they do have concerns about that terminology of eminent domain. So I'm just wondering if this is typical of, all the towns around us, they all do this? Or is it, I know we've done it and I understand that and that's our precedent, but it is a concern that a few people have raised to me just in terms of, are we going to do this on a case-by-case basis, or is this something that's going to be uniform? And if they abut anything that the town is going to purchase going forward, if you were like a direct abutter of this, for instance, you may have concerns.
So certainly the select board is in a position to make this article say whatever it would like it to say. It's the select board's article, and the next time an article like this comes up, it would be up to that select board to determine what it wanted an article to say. Again, it is consistent with the way that Milton has done it. I don't know that I can really speak to too many other towns. I can tell you that the towns that we represent as a firm, we recommend this language too in articles where they're acquiring property, because we do like to have some room. As Mr. Zulus mentioned, from time to time there are issues that pop up in title. For instance, one of the issues that Mr. Milano and I were discussing today is that this property has actually 2 different street addresses associated with it. It identifies on the assessor's map as a singular parcel, but it has been known as
930 Brook
930
and 444 Center.
444 Center. So with the idea in mind that from time to time there are some peculiarities that pop up, this concept of having the option to take the property by eminent domain if it ever occurred that maybe there was some small piece of this property, and again, not a neighbor's property, not an abutter's property, but some piece of this property, maybe there was some square in it that the title was not clear on, that it was held in some other entity that no one could reach or wasn't available as a result of some transfer that took place many years ago. The town would want to be able to say, all right, we're gonna take care of that by way of this taking, to, to make sure that we actually take the whole parcel as opposed to all of it except for this one square over in the corner that we can't track down the owner of. But again, it's entirely up to the board, to this board, to determine what's in the article, and the warrant committee and town meeting, of course, can always take a pass on the eminent domain piece and say, no, we just would like the select board to have so much authority as requires them to purchase the property.
Thank you. I'm just trying to understand that. Thank you.
Erin, would you like to weigh in?
Nope, I'm good. Know all about eminent domain.
Thank you. Mr. Zulus?
Just one further point. Under this language, the select board would have no authority to take any abutters land. This is just that property. So any abutter, I think, should be satisfied that the select board would have no authority whatsoever to do that. So it would only be the property at issue, not any abutters property.
Okay, thank you.
Nick, do you have you need?
Yes, and the other piece I just wanted to note that Kevin and I discussed briefly was this question of the address. It was another question that we received. So with the board's approval, we'll slightly tweak the reference to the location to probably add in the reference to the assessor's map and parcel number, just so it's clear. Like I said, if you go on our GIS, you can search for 930 Brook Road. This will come up, but there'll be a 444 on there. There's a dashed line. So I think in terms of clarity for folks, that might be helpful clarification just for the article when people receive it in the mail.
We've used the GIS for another piece of property at that intersection, and what you're suggesting and recommending is very wise. We have a motion to approve the index greeting page in the warrant for the special town meeting scheduled for Monday, February 13th, 2023, and that's a question. Do we have one?
I'll make a motion to approve the index greeting page of the warrant. Is that it? For the special town meeting, February 13th, 2023.
Do we have a second, please?
I will second that.
Thank you. We'll do roll call vote. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. Item number 10, we turn to the annual town meeting, May 1, 2023. Nick, can you walk us through this? Taking a look at articles that may be ready for approval by the board tonight and others that would be deferred for approval at another meeting?
Sure. So I apologize. I distributed this, Mr. Wells. I can give you a copy this afternoon. Did you have one? No, I'm good. I have it electronically.
I can listen.
So I provided a list of articles that regularly appear on the warrant that we plan to have on the warrant this year as in keeping with past years. The second thing I provided is a list of the articles received in our office for the for the annual town meeting, and I can walk through the new ones quickly with you folks here. Just give me one moment. The first few on the list of new articles for inclusion this year are from the Finance Director, Amy Dexter, and I, related to a few financial mechanisms. The first is to rescind some unissued debt. So this is borrowing authorizations for projects that are complete that did not need the full amount of money that was issued. So it's a bookkeeping article that we would rescind the delta between what the project cost and what was approved by town meeting. The last time we did this was, I believe, at the annual in 2019. So there's been a few more that we can reduce, and Amy will work on that list. The second two are both related to the PEG Access Fund. And as we went through the issue that we faced earlier this year where the town appropriated more money that was in our account when it made the appropriation and then had to amend the appropriation and then increase the appropriation, we're looking at alternative ways to manage that fund. One option that we have is to make it an enterprise fund. So everything would remain the same except for how we appropriate at town meeting and how we manage the fund on our books. The money would come in from the cable companies to the town like they do today. They'd be set aside in a special fund. An article would appear at the town meeting to appropriate them, It would just be an enterprise fund moving forward, which would mean that the town can appropriate estimated revenues that may come in the forthcoming fiscal year, not just rely on what it has already received to date. So again, more of a just an adjustment in terms of how that how those monies will be managed and kept on our books. The fourth one I've titled Article D is the town is receiving money from the National Opioid Settlement. Those agreements were signed earlier this calendar year. This is a mechanism to set aside those monies for appropriation by town meeting. So we would take all those monies that we received to date, plus any future monies received in future years, put them into a stabilization fund, and then go to town meeting with an article to draw monies out of that stabilization fund as the select board recommends and sees fit. This doesn't recommend any spending of that money yet. It's just a bookkeeping mechanism to set aside those monies for future appropriation by town meeting. Article E and F are both related to the potential for bringing forward the bylaws that are being worked on by General Code and the town clerk. We have not received General Code's final work on those, but the town clerk did ask us to hold 2 articles for them. So those are the 2. One would be for the bylaws, one would be for the zoning bylaw, and it is hopeful that we'll have those ready very soon.
Good.
Article G on the list is the school building committee appropriation. This would be an appropriation assuming the purchase of font bond moves forward and we reach agreement and town meeting approves it. So this would be an appropriation article to set aside money for an owner's project manager, a designer, to begin the work of designing that project so it can come back to the town meeting for approval of the full project. We're still working with Sean, our work in terms of a dollar number on that, but we have the article from the school building committee related to that in terms of seeking additional funding. The next 2 articles, labeled H and I, are related to the Guile Road project. And so these are articles that we've requested that town council work on with the school building committee to be ready to keep moving forward on the parallel path in terms of moving forward on font bond while also moving forward on Guile Road. As necessary, I'll defer to Mr. Zulus and Mr. Doyle to speak to that more directly. One is to authorize the select board to acquire property, which is related to acquiring the land that's in conservation, to acquire the conservation land. And I think, Kevin, if I'm not doing a good job of describing that, please jump in. And the second one is to do the land swap, essentially, and petition the general court for special legislation related to Article 97.
We didn't vote that already last year? I thought we already voted that, no? All right, okay.
Article listed as Article J is the Community Preservation Committee's project recommendations. They are meeting in the month of February to take up the projects and make recommendations for grant funding. So this is the article that we've received from Rob and the CPC, which will be filled out as they complete their work on terms of which projects they will be bringing forward to town meeting with a recommendation. They also have their other article related to their fiscal year budget. So they'll have 2 articles at this year's town meeting, one for their budget and one for their project recommendations. Article K was received by the Bylaw Review Committee. This would extend their term, and they've also asked for an appropriation for monies for administrative support. I had a very brief conversation with Mr. Mullen about this several months ago. I had reached out to him to follow up with some more information about the scope of money. You know, he gave me a ballpark of $5,000 to $10,000 that the committee is seeking. I think we still have some more follow-up to do on that piece. Many of our committees would love administrative support, but it is a tricky question when it comes to our budget.
I have a related question, Mr. Milano, if I may. This bylaw review committee has been in place for a very long time. Is the extension limited in time and not open-ended?
They are seeking a 2-year extension.
And the purpose of the money, is it like a consultant?
I believe, and I'd want to follow up, but I believe it's the clerical assistance
It's clerical, so it's with staff support for that committee.
for the committee.
I take it that's going to be because they intend to produce some, that's, yeah. Someone's got to type. I get, okay, I guess.
Article L is pretty much.
Can I interrupt? I had my hand up, sorry,
Oh,
Nick.
sorry.
Certainly.
It's okay, I'm just gonna have to interrupt, sorry for that, Mr. Chair. Can I be recognized?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. So in regards to that bylaw review committee, when I was on the warrant committee, we had just renewed their term length. I want to say it was 2 years ago. And the reason why they wanted it renewed then was because they were saying that they couldn't make headway because of COVID and not being able to meet. I am very concerned about this article being back on here asking for even more time extension, like the chair had mentioned. And I really would like to know some more information from you, Nick, about this, because I am not comfortable in voting for a term extension for a committee that has been around now for, I want to say 6 years, I think. So, so I would appreciate some more information on that. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for mentioning how long they have been working on this with very little results so far that we've seen.
You're thinking it's consistent with mine, and maybe we could defer, okay?
Certainly.
Defer the vote
We
tonight.
have the information that you requested. Thank you for raising that. Mr. Wells?
Thank you.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm fine
Okay.
with deferring.
Sorry about that, Ms. Bradley. Article L is a very vague placeholder article for the Historic District Study Committee. I know they're working on going through the process of creating historic districts, but more to come on that. I did want to put it on everybody's radar.
Their plan is to have this for the Maytown meeting. They have a process that they have to go through between now and then, which includes public hearings and so on down the line. And that is getting underway at the present time.
Articles, the last two, M and N here, are related, came from Chase Berkeley at DPW. Still some work to do on them where we have crafted some language around them. One would be to set up a revolving fund for some permit fees, but I'll have to come back to you with more information about that. And the second one is to accept a provision of Massachusetts general laws that would allow the town to use as-built deposits that the Department of Public Works has collected, but have been abandoned by the folks who made them. There's a process stipulated in state law about how you have to reach out to the people who made payment before it can be taken by the town. Working on that still, but both of these articles came in from him, so I wanted to include them on the list for now, although we have some more homework to do on both of them. Lastly, Article O is related to outdoor residential lighting. It has been transmitted over to the planning board as something that they have been requested to take up. Mr. Doyle, I think I'm not speaking out of turn in terms of where we are at on that.
Waiting to hear on a possible meeting date change. Member Bradley and I have been in discussions on this, and I've been in conversations with the chair of the planning board.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is that building commissioner has reached out to me to ask for some time to speak about the stretch code and some changes that have been made to the stretch code, and potentially a warrant article related to the stretch code. So I'll work with him to coordinate a time for him to come in and discuss that with you. And we will, I don't see why the next meeting won't work, but I'll circle back with the board on that. But I wanted to put that on your radar as well. I didn't include it on the list because we didn't get there with language or anything, and before we did that, I wanted to make sure he had a chance to speak with you. So that's what we've received in addition to the typical articles that we see at our annual town meeting. Happy to take any questions on any of those specific ones. If there are any that the board is ready to say can be approved for inclusion on the warrant, if you're so inclined to vote on any of them, I will transmit them to the warrant committee so that they have them.
Are you comfortable in recommending A through N with the exception of K?
With the exception of K, which is the bylaw review committee.
Right, we were deferring that. Any further information?
At the historic district, I would say KLMN. So historic bylaw review committee, historic district and then the two that we received from DPW.
Those are the ones you want to omit.
I want to include them in the future, but I just want to do some work on them. They're not ready quite yet.
So I'll make a motion to approve the remainder.
I have a question.
Then if you listen, you can rate those.
Is there a second, and then we'll have discussion?
Sure.
A second.
Second, Mr. Zulus. The floor is open. Ms. Musto.
I have a question regarding the outdoor residential lighting. I wanted to understand a little bit about the process. So what is the process to get something onto the warrant, I guess? Because I know that this has been on our agenda several times, and we've never discussed it, and now it's going to the planning board. But yet we're putting it on this to get, to go out potentially to, on the warrant. So I'm just trying to understand the process and how that is done.
I thought you wanted to admit that till the planning board got back to you.
So I think my understanding at this point is this potential proposal has been presented to the chair of the planning board as something that they might be interested in taking up, not being transmitted by the select board per se. If that's...
And we have had it as an information item, if I remember correctly, at a previous select board meeting.
Well, it's been on there, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it. It's been listed on our agenda, and we haven't talked about it. So that's what I'm just trying to understand the process. So going forward, if anything else comes up, what the process is, I guess. I'm just trying to understand it better because it has been on our agenda. Sure it has been, but we haven't discussed it at all. And I know it's going to the planning board, but to have it listed here, I'm just trying to understand how it got from A to Z. You know what I mean? And how this will affect other potential warrant articles. So I was wondering a little bit more about
No,
the
I
process.
think I agree from my perspective. The select board hasn't voted whether to include it on the warrant. The select board hasn't voted to send it to the planning board. So I've been asked to include it as a potential article, just as I was asked about all these other articles. So that's why I've carried it on this list. I think the question that you're asking is there any approval that has to happen by this board to have it sent over to the planning board? Or can a member just ask for the planning board to take up a zoning article?
I think there are two issues. That's
Sure.
one. The
Okay.
other issue is to get it onto the list for the warrant.
Mm-hmm.
So if we said today we're going to approve all these to be on the warrant, that's what I'm asking about as well. Isn't it a little premature at this point?
Yes, that's why I segregated it out as a zoning article, because it's not something that the select board would, at this point, put on the warrant with the other articles, because there's a certain process that potential zoning articles have to follow. And I'll defer to town council in terms of the legal process there, but that's why I created the two lists to show articles that we've received per the request to submit them by January 11th at 5 p.m. And then this article that I know that Mr. Doyle and Ms. Bradley have been in communication with the planning board about.
Right, and that's to get the planning board's input before it can come back to us, so that what we have to work on is something that would be consistent with what it is that the planning board would require. And they may modify it and adopt a modified version of it, and then bring it back to us. Mr. Wells?
So I haven't really followed this article. So the planning board, you had to reach out to them, or they reached out to you?
We reached out to them to let them know about it. And
Because it's a zoning article?
Yes.
Okay.
It's moved from an ordinance, which would be a policing matter, to a bylaw. Kevin, you could probably help with this very much.
So, bylaws regarding lighting in towns have been dealt with in a number of other communities as zoning bylaws.
Special services enforcement versus police enforcement.
So, and the AG's office has seen them as such, as amendments to the zoning bylaw based on, or actual zoning bylaws based on how they function, based on what it is that they regulate. That being the case, the starting point has to be planning board. So the planning board could take up this issue without any direction or input from the select board if it so chose. It could just take this up and hold a public hearing under the general laws get input, and then come to the select board and say, we'd like to submit this article to the select board to be included on the warrant. The select board can say no, or can say yes. Ultimately, the select board has control over all the articles that wind up on the warrant, subject to citizens petitions, which are a different process.
And my other question is, what are the deadlines for us deciding on other articles?
So the select board is in control of the warrant, and the select board can add articles up until the last minute.
Well,
right?
that's what I'm asking. What is the print? Whatever, that's all.
I don't have that right in front of me. It's not until March
Yeah.
at least.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to understand the process a little bit better, so I appreciate your input.
Questions?
Thank you.
Good questions, and appreciate you doing so. Mr. Zulus?
Though I think that deadline is earlier because the warrant committee would need to review it.
Yes.
So typically, we would want to approve inclusion of an article within the time to let the warrant committee vet the article. So we'd want to give them enough time.
Sure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Mr. Wells?
So given Kevin's explanation and understanding zoning enforcement articles and how they're done, I think it'd be prudent for us to hear what the planning board has to say, because you're putting this actually on Joe Pronak's office to enforce a violation of it.
Exactly right.
So back to I don't think I included that in the motion. I think I added all the others that you had mentioned and excluded the ones.
You had said A to N except for K, which would exclude O. And I suggested we go stop at J.
We have a second from Mr. Zulus, if I
Yes.
remember correctly. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask town council to do a review of all the articles, and then we'll transmit them to the warrant committee.
There is a proposed motion on the agenda about closing the warrant for the annual town meeting. You want to address that?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Yes, the closing date that we had advertised was January 11th. That has passed, and at this point, we recommend that the select board vote to close the warrant.
I'll move to close the warrant for the annual town meeting on Monday, May 1st, 2023.
Any discussion?
I've been in this position before.
Right. Seeing none, Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto? And
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. We have an item number 11, the committee appointments. These are reappointments to the Municipal Broadband Committee. Is there a motion for these appointments? Mr. Zulus, would you like to?
Sure, I'll move to reappoint the following individuals to the Municipal Broadband Committee: Mark Day, Rob Lynch, John Sullivan, and Joseph Chamberlain, for terms to expire on June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes.
Moving right along.
Item number 12, discussion approval of Massachusetts Department of Transportation response to the town of Milton's letter regarding the proposed project at Route 28, Randolph Avenue and Chickatobit Road. Mr. Milano, can we turn to you for this, please?
Sure, thank you. We have received an administrative response from the Mass DOT, not the T. They have discussed, they have a draft, they're working on it with their designer, and they've been sent out for a review by their designer. They noted that one of the delays has been that a number of comments were outside of the scope of this project, so they had to speak to other folks at Mass DOT. It was not just the project team that was responding. That was received about 10 days ago. Still all quiet from them. I'm happy to follow up formally from the town, requesting an update and seeking response to the town's letter. I suggest give them maybe 2 weeks from when I transmit the letter at this point. Now it's been quite some time.
Agreeable? I don't think we need a motion on this.
Okay with that.
Consensus, does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 13, discussion update, Senate Bill 3124, an act establishing speed limits on portions of Route 28 and Chickatobit Road in the town of Milton. We heard extensively on this earlier
So
this
moved.
evening. No A motion is needed on this one. Any further comment by anybody?
So Chair, maybe for Ms. Bradley, so she knew. Senator Timilty joined our meeting earlier.
Mr. Milano, I actually get Politico every morning, so I had already read it before I knew, so I already know all about it.
Okay.
So you don't need to recap for me. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Item number 14, discussion approval, letter to the town moderator requesting permission for the Equity and Justice for All Committee to make a presentation on the report at the special town meeting in February. This goes back to, I think it was the December 5 meeting, where there was considerable discussion about a request that had been made from one of the co-chairs of the Equity and Justice for All Committee to speak for approximately 10 minutes at the town meeting. I think at that time the focus was on the February town meeting.
It was December, I think it was for
December.
December. It was for December.
For the December, right?
Yeah.
Wow,
It
right
was.
on the
It was urged for
It was.
December, yes.
That was the first, that was the request.
And motion was, the moderator took a different position on this. A motion was made to send a letter to the moderator making such a request. The moderator suggested as an alternative sending the report to all the members of the town meeting, and that has now been done. The discussion has continued, and the moderator has responded recently and asked just today, since he has a business conflict, if I would read his position on this matter at the present time.
Mr. Chair, I mean, if I may, I mean, we can go through this, but I think it's fair to have the moderator here. I hesitate to we might have some discussion of it, but I think it's fair to have him here.
I have no objection to that. In fact, I would agree with it entirely if
Yeah.
that's... Yeah, okay. Good, thank you. Okay, we move on to item number 15, discussion approval, Select Board Finance Committee report.
Done for the year?
We turn to Mike, and Mike maybe calling upon Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing for approval. This morning, we had a meeting, as we typically do, with the members of the school committee, and the primary focus of discussion was the FY24 budget. Now, the headlines are, everything is very preliminary. Revenue estimates are very preliminary. We are trying to, the town administrator and the departments in town are trying to develop budgets, including all the departments, including the school department. The headline from the school department is that the school department has voted a budget, a needs-based budget of $62,484,812. Now, with all of the caveats about everything being preliminary, including revenue estimates, this would result in a needs-based school budget and a level service budget for the other departments in town of approximately $4.3 million in deficit.
That's the delta.
Now, what we have asked the town administrator and the town accountant to do is to create an apples-to-apples review of a needs-based budget for all the departments in town, so we can get an accurate picture. And assuming we have that, that $4.2 million deficit may rise, may not, but it may rise. And then also, we have right now a spreadsheet that shows the all the departments in town at level service, and that deficit is about $3.2 million. But so I think the effort right now for the Finance Committee is to see what a needs-based budget will look like for all the departments in town, and to dig further on revenue sources. And we'll know more about revenue, I think it's fair to say, towards the end of the month. And Mr. Milano reported this morning, we hope to know more about free cash. We hope to know more about revenue sources by the end of the month. We have a tentative meeting on the 30th, and hopefully we will have more to report both on budgets town-wide and revenue at our next meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley, did you want to add anything? Oh, okay, you got
No,
a thumbs up, Mike?
he covered everything we did earlier this morning. It was a really robust discussion, and really interested to see what all the town departments report back. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Mr. Milano at the end of the month.
So that
Thank you.
good question. That
Yes.
that 4.3, that doesn't include increases in new growth, you know, you don't have cherry sheet numbers, you don't know what,
Yeah. So,
obviously you don't know what free cash is.
yeah, that is a very conservative, as we always have done since I've been involved in it, a very conservative view of revenue, both in terms of Chapter 70, in terms of state and local aid, in terms of new growth, very conservative numbers. As we proceed in the process, those numbers will take a little more shape, but we've always taken a very conservative approach at the initial stage so we can try to get a handle on things.
Better safe than sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean,
The stakes are very high.
You're not kidding.
Number 16 is going to be deferred. I'll turn to Nick to see if he wants to say anything about it before we move on to 17.
No, I think in context of Mike's discussion now, it makes sense to roll this into the next Select Board Finance Committee meeting and then back to the Select Board after that point.
Okay. We move to 17, which is discussion approval, second reading, other post-employment benefits policy. And Mr. Zulus, can we turn to you again?
Same draft that we had 2 weeks ago. The goal here, if we have approval of this policy tonight, then during his ratings call his call with the S&P ratings agency, Mr. Milano can inform the ratings agency that we do, in fact, have an other post-employment benefits liability policy.
Policy is in a policy, not policy as an insurance policy.
Right, exactly. A policy of what we would, a guidepost for the town.
Versus,
A guidepost for the town. And our hope is that will be viewed favorably by the ratings agencies.
Mr. Chair, I'll just add that we have the questions from S&P, and there are a number of questions about the town's financial policies, diving deep into each of the components that would make a complete set of financial policies. So I think this will be beneficial for our conversation tomorrow, and also speaks to some of the work that I know that had been undertaken earlier last calendar year, in terms of getting back to addressing some of the town's financial policies, revisiting them, updating them, and taking a close look at them. And I think that's something we should pick back up once we cross this off the list, get through tomorrow, and circle back on the town's financial policies across the board.
Sounds very prudent. So in terms of the motion that's on the table,
I'll make a motion to approve the other post-employment benefits liability policy.
is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. Discussion? No comments? Roll call, Mrs. Zulus.
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
I'll abstain.
Abstaining. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you. Item number 18, discussion approval, creation of a in charge for Climate Action Planning Committee. Mike, we have a motion on this. You've been the champion, and we thank you for bringing it to where it is at the present time. Would you like to move?
Well,
Some background, and then we can discuss.
yeah, sure. I'll provide a little background. What you have before you is a red line showing some changes since the last meeting when we discussed it. The changes consist of changes that were suggested by the chair during the meeting and subsequent, and then a few suggestions from a representative from Sustainable Milton. And those are the essence of the changes. So the marked draft shows the changes from what we had 2 weeks ago. The clean draft incorporates all those changes.
Make the motion. I'd make it, I don't have it in front of me, you make it.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the creation of a charge for a climate action planning committee.
Mr. Welch, your second.
I did.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to say a few things. First of all, I wanted to thank specifically the people that came today. I wrote their names down: Mr. McLean, Ms. Tagayas, Ms. Wilbur, and the Fuller Village residents, Lucy Meadows, and Taya Pruner. And we've got a lot of correspondence as well on this, and so certainly it's a very important topic, and it's very timely, and it's important. And I do appreciate all the correspondence that we did receive on it. So all the people that did take time, I think that was really beneficial. And I also wanted to give a shout out to all the hardworking people at Sustainable Milton and our town employees, specifically Josh Lee and Mara Patel in that department. I think they've done a really great job. And certainly it's an important issue. I also wanted to say that going forward, I think this committee is important and relevant. And, as we're looking at all these committees, Ms. Bradley and I do think this is one that we probably should have approved sooner, I suppose, but certainly relevant and important. The one thing going forward I would encourage the committee to do is, with a lot of the ideas and aspects of this committee, that what they will be looking at, it's very important that we know what the financial implications are of any of these changes that potentially, we would be looking at. So I think that's really important. We need to know how the initiatives will affect the infrastructure of the town and the residents. So I would just say that.
Chair would like to make 2 comments. Last night, the Conservation Commission entertained the draft, and we unanimously adopted the following resolution. The Conservation Commission endorses the proposed creation and implementation of the Climate Action Committee by the Select Board. If approved by the Select Board, the Conservation Commission will designate a member of the Commission for active participation on the Climate Action Committee and will make recommendations to the Select Board for the appointment of additional members of the community with expertise in the fields of climate control and environmental protection. My second point as chair is that while delayed, we have a far better product than we would have had 6 to 8
years ago.
Months ago,
months
actually.
ago, even, yeah.
And what I'd like from this experience and the experience with the youth committee is to suggest, if you're not already doing this with your subcommittee on committees, is to take a look at the possibility of our having guidelines for anyone who wants to make a recommendation to the Select Board for a committee, so that when they come to us initially, they come to us with a template that has the type of substance that allows for us to make expedient decisions one way or the other, rather than people having to invent totally on their own, apart from what we can help guide them to bring to us. So I just wanted to pass that along to you. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Just one comment.
Yes.
I want to add one person to your list of thank yous. Most people don't know, but anyone who works for the town knows that our Consolidated Facilities Director, on behalf of both the schools and the town, has done yeoman's work in this arena for as long as I can remember, and has brought thousands upon thousands of dollars in green credits and savings. He's everything from solar panels to charging stations, him and former town administrator, Mr. Dent. I mean, he's just done so much work for as long as I can remember in this area, and I know that his time with us as a full-time employee are coming to an end and soon, and I really want to thank him for all he's done in this, because he's done unbelievable work in this over the past 10 years.
Do you want to drop a name?
Bill Ritchie.
Thank you.
Oh, did I not say his name? Oh, no, I did say, I said his title, not his name.
And I do
Oh, God,
apologize
Bill,
for
I apologize.
omitting
It's gonna kill me.
his name, so.
I wonder why you gave me this look. I'm like, what did I do?
And as I said earlier, there are others who have written, and their letters will be a matter of record. So we have a motion that's been seconded. Roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, I do think it's important to point out for the public the membership of this committee. It's wide-ranging, and it touches on many different stakeholders. It includes a member of this board or a designee, a member of the school committee or a designee, a member of the planning board or a designee, a member of the conservation commission or a designee, a member of Sustainable Milton or a designee as selected by Sustainable Milton, a member of the Chamber of Commerce or a designee as selected by the Chamber, a member selected by the town administrator, and 2 residents who have expertise in planning, energy infrastructure, sustainable architecture, carbon emission reduction, mitigating climate risks, energy efficiency, energy conservation, climate, social justice advocacy, community organizing, or other relevant fields as selected by the Select Board. So we have the opportunity for a wide-ranging, substantive committee that can really do good work on behalf of the town.
Did you have transportation in there? Anything in transport? It's just a thought. It's just such a contributing factor to
energy efficiency, energy conservation.
All right.
I think the umbrellas are there. Yeah, thank you for adding
And carbon
that.
emission reduction.
Okay, that's the.
And I might note that we received the first application of expression of interest from a member of the community today. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle? Yes, it is unanimous.
Mr. Chair, before you move on, I had my hand up. Can I make a comment?
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's okay. We're going to roll with this wonderful schedule.
I'm going to
in the
move
back
one of
a-
these eyes over here.
It's totally okay. I'm in the back of the library here, so I'm doing all right. I just wanted to say that I heard your comment about the template that to require and establish volunteer committees, so that it would be a guide to people to follow when they're bringing up these new committees to the select board. And I wanted to just let you know that tomorrow morning, Ms. Musto and I are meeting for that subcommittee on boards and committees and reviewing a policy handbook. And I will make sure and add that section as something that we should work on moving forward. And I look forward to other suggestions, not only from you, but from the select board on that. So thank you, and it's been noted.
Thank you for that consideration. Appreciate it. Item number 19, approval meeting minutes, December 5, 2022, December 6, 2022, and December 21, 2022. I found no substantive issues with the content of the minutes. Ms. Musto, did you have any?
I don't know if Lynn is still on, but there were a few things I emailed her, minor changes on a few of them. Some were punctuation, minor changes. I think they were all really minor things. I don't know if Lynn's on there.
My observation was that anything was minor, yeah.
Yeah, they're very minor on all of them.
Well, we could make
Instead
the
of waiting the
motion
time to
subject
go
to
through
those
them.
modifications.
Yep.
Any other comments on the minutes? Do we have motion to approve subject to modifications?
I'll make that motion subject to approve subject. Motion approved subject to modifications.
Second?
I will second
Thank
that.
you, Ms. Musto. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes, thank you. Chair's report, our town administrator's report, please, first.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few updates today. Last week, I announced that we appointed a new IT director for the town. Rob Mallett is taking over as the permanent IT director. He had been serving as an interim since February of 2021. Rob has worked for the town since 2004, and we're very excited for him, and he is very excited, so we're happy to have him in that role permanently. We've already begun working on the job description for the position in his department, and we look forward to getting that out. The IT committee was also helpful throughout the process and has been helpful in terms of revamping his job description as well as the job description for the additional employee in his office. I mentioned already that I was at the Norfolk County Managers meeting. Most of the conversation was about the MBTA community zoning, as I discussed. Beginning Friday and again on Saturday is the MMA annual meeting, the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting. They have a number of workshops that I will be attending on Friday. Our Managers Association has a business meeting on Saturday that I'll be planning to attend, and some additional workshops on Saturday. I'll note that the town is receiving an award from our insurer, which is Maya, which is a partner of and contingent to MMA. This is an award to the town for our risk management efforts, and primarily thanks to the efforts of Paige Eppolito, HR Director, Bill Ritchie, Facilities Director, and Chase Berkeley for the amount of training that we've undertaken in other risk management initiatives to reduce potential issues and claims on the insurance side of the house. Mr. Zulus mentioned that we're meeting with Standard S&P tomorrow for a ratings call ahead of an issuance of some a bond issuance in February. As you all know, the school committee did make a selection on a new superintendent, Mr. Burrows, Dr. Burrows, I should say, from Vermont. We look forward to working to him, assuming contract negotiations are going well. He'll be in Milton starting July 1st. My understanding is he'll have some time to be in Milton ahead of that too, and just look forward to working with him when he does arrive. I wanted to mention an event that Brian Cronin from the Board of Assessors and Charlie O'Shea, our Chief Appraiser, is doing at the Council on Aging on January 25th at 1 p.m. They're having a conversation about tax exemptions that are open to folks who are age 60 and over. You should register for the event, but you can do so by calling the Council on Aging. So thanks to Brian and Charlie for taking some time to meet with seniors at the Council on Aging. And I think that covers just about everything I want to touch on. In terms of the town election, nomination papers are available. They're available beginning yesterday. They're due back, if I have the dates in front of me, which I don't. I apologize. The information is on the town website, on the town clerk's page. She sent me all the dates, and of course, I don't have them right in front of me. But visit the town website. Town meeting members should be receiving their cards. I do know they have to be back by February 28th, and nomination papers are due shortly thereafter for others interested in running for office. Mr. Chair, I think that's my update.
Any questions for Mr. Milano?
I have two quick ones. One is, do we know the amount of that award that we're going to be getting back? Dollar amount?
It's not a grant. It's a
just an award,
recognition.
so it's not
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I know, but we did receive.
Credits though, don't we get training?
We get we get a rewards grant each year based on the amount of activities, trainings, professional development that town staff participate in. And this year, the amount I believe was $7,500. So it can be used on buying things that will reduce our risk or future trainings. Okay. And there's a wellness program that Maya puts on for town employees that we try to take advantage of as well.
Please extend our compliments and congratulations to them.
And I do have one other quick thing. If we can put it either, I don't know if it should be asked of you or the chair, if we could give some consideration to putting some of our packet information as they did. I know Mr. Milano said in Medfield they had done that. If we could at least put that on our radar for either a future meeting that we discuss that, to put our packets up online at least, so residents will know what we're discussing ahead of time in case they would like to come to Citizen Speak. Especially I'm thinking in terms of some of the warrant articles. There's not really a process through the warrant committee for them to go and speak at a Citizen Speak, but there would be here. So just wondering if that's something we can revisit.
Mr. Milano did bring your interest to my attention, and I suggested exactly what you did, that we put it on an agenda, upcoming agenda.
Thank you. I just didn't know if I should ask him.
Okay.
Thanks.
Chair, thank you.
Happy to do so.
Thank you.
One point,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, before we move forward, I think we should extend a public thank you to Reverend Dr. Conley Hughes, the pastor of West Concord Baptist, and the Milton Interfaith for their hospitality and sponsoring the MLK event on Monday night.
And to compliment them on an excellent program. Wasn't it wonderful? For those of us who all.
As always.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Wells. The chair threaded his reports throughout the meeting. I have nothing to add to them, and public comment has been substantively addressed. We'll turn to item number 23, which is future meeting dates. Tuesday, February 7th, 2023, and Monday, February 13th, 2023, Tuesday, February 21, 2023. With an addendum, we have an accumulating number of what will hopefully be small, quickly attended to items, with one or two possibly taking a little bit more time. There are some deadlines coming up, like the 25th of January for CPC, recommendations that are endorsements that have been asked of the select board. So we would like to see if we could have a brief meeting of the select board on January 24th. Is that a Tuesday, Nick?
The 24th is a Tuesday, yes.
Tuesday. At 7 o'clock on that evening. It'd be hybrid for those who may have difficulty making it. Ms. Bradley, would that Tuesday work for you?
It would at
She's not on
7:30, if that's okay.
That's okay? You'll check?
I think she said more than that.
No, I did. I said that's totally fine if we could make it at 7:30 instead of 7.
Is that agreeable?
What's the date?
Tuesday,
The
January
24th.
24?
That's next Tuesday, right?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
And this is just a quick meeting that we could do, this is just to make some approval, just to vote some stuff?
Well, we'll have two, I think, that have come in.
We've received 2 requests from applicants who have projects going to CPC, requesting select board support. Potentially others will come in, and the CPC has set a deadline of January 25th to receive any comments. So they've been asked, that was one of the considerations of trying to meet on the 24th in case there are projects that are seeking select board support.
What are the 2 projects?
That we received are the Conservation Commission one and Forbes House.
Forbes House, right.
Okay.
And then we have a couple of others.
Yeah, I think the other piece is there could be something with Fontbonne that will come up that will demand a meeting.
So this will give us a little bit of elasticity protection. Instead of going into executive session at this time as had been planned, maybe we can recess this meeting. We recess without having to adjourn and then go to the Governor Stoughton and then come back to executive session and adjourn from executive session, Kevin?
I think,
Do we even need to recess? Do we even need to recess?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, because we're going into a separate meeting as the trustees.
yes, you could recess this meeting and then constitute the Governor Stoughton meeting, complete the Governor Stoughton meeting, come back to the select board meeting, and then at that time move to go into select board executive session items to adjourn from executive session.
Thank you.
I'm making a motion to recess before he forgets all this.
All right, second to recess? Thank you,
I will second.
Roxanne. No discussion. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Busto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. It's been a long time since I've read Robert's rules, but some things do stick with you. Thank you for confirming all of that. So we will now call to order the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust. Purpose is to discuss the town farm site, affordable housing trust, and affordable housing development on the town farm. I don't think there are any need for introductions of the members of the trust since the select board members serve as the trustees for the Governor Stoughton Trust. We have at least 2 proponents of affordable housing trust with us this evening, and we'd welcome you both to the table. Ask if you could introduce yourselves, and Chair, the floor is yours. Chair
Great.
recognizes both of you.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Julie Kramer. I live at 58 Frothingham Street. I am currently the chair of the Milton Affordable Housing Trust, and I have with me a trustee.
Tom Callahan, at 16 Orono. I'm a member of the Housing Trust and town meeting member from Precinct 4.
Thank you all for allowing us to spend some time with you today discussing the town farm, also known as the Poor Farm. I have a pretty long history with the Poor Farm. I was actually on the committee that reviewed the Poor Farm and unfortunately made the decision to sell it to the Pulte. And I, have finally gotten over that. That was a sting. But we're here to talk about the remaining 3.5 acres of the Poor Farm and hopefully reestablish it as housing for the poor, affordable housing. We, understand there are other uses of the farm currently, and that was discussed last week. And we have been working on this, the Affordable Housing Trust, for years. We believe that there has been some small movement made by the trustees, by the Governor Stoughton trustees and the town, re-engaging with Massachusetts Housing Partnership, MHP, to decide on the issuance of an RFP, request for proposal, for the site for the remaining 3.5 acres for affordable housing. And so we're here today to discuss that process with you, encourage you to take another big step forward in that process, and re-engage with MHP and make a decision on formalizing a request for proposal, formalizing the process to get a proposal out and to the public, and to review proposals that might be submitted in response to the RFP. We understand that there are questions that MHP has submitted to the town. We, on the Affordable Housing Trust, have responded to those questions. We had a meeting on September 13th and then again yesterday to draft responses to those questions that we'd like to share with you. I don't know if you've gotten those as part of your package. And our hope really is, as a next step, is to maybe do a joint letter back to MHP with some responses to those questions. I think that's a really important next step for MHP, who has been waiting on a response from the town in order to start more deliberately creating an RFP, a document that could be distributed more publicly.
I would just add, Julie's laid it out well. I would just add, I think timing is really good at this point. There is some momentum behind movement. Obviously, MHP being willing to draft an RFP for the town is a tremendous resource that we think, take advantage of. But the Affordable Housing Trust has also applied to the Community Preservation Committee for funding. That's a critical element, right? And that's kind of one of the reasons why it hasn't moved faster. Given the funds that the Affordable Housing Trust already has, plus anticipated new funds from the Community Preservation Committee, if that is so approved by town meeting, will give us hopefully enough money to be taken seriously by the development community in responding to the RFP. I think that it is a truism out there that developers often are burnt by communities that are divided around affordable housing or not seriously moving forward, or not, and one sign of that seriousness is a active, well-funded affordable housing trust. And for the first time, Milton can say that. We've been active, but we haven't been well-funded. So I think we're getting there, thanks to some of your efforts as the Board of Selectmen, as town meeting members, as trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust, thanks to some of the efforts that we've engaged in with Pulte and the sale of those 2 condos in East Milton, where those proceeds came back to the trust. That was a big influx of money recently. So I think all of that is that we're poised for action here, and I think we want to not lose that momentum and also take advantage of MHP's offer while it still stands. So.
Well, thank you both very much. Time is of the essence. Can you, Bob Labash, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee, presented to us recently on the applications that had been received and indicated that there was one from you and gave a brief overview. You've touched on it. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that particular topic, or you think we're informed enough?
On the application, or?
Yes.
Yeah, we submitted an application for funds that would be used for some of our work plan, but more specifically for an RFP, as Tom mentioned. You know, developers who would consider developing on that site would love to see that as a town we've dedicated funds, we've dedicated the site, and we really want to actively see production, housing production. So we did make an application into CPC for some funding that would be, you know, sort of the first component of the funding needed for production, for housing production up there. And, you know, when the state gets involved and they award funding to the project, they like to see that the town has contributed as well. So it's a really critical piece of getting work done up there that the town is supportive of, that the town has say on how it looks, how it feels, and that we are putting our money where our mouth is.
I think, as you can see in this, in the Affordable Housing Trust's answer to the MHP question about affordability, we I think decided to have a floor, essentially, to say, as Julie said, it's a poor farm, right? Governor Stoughton gave it to the town for the use to benefit the town's poor. We started at 50%, at least 50% of the units should be affordable, to a maximum of below 80% of area median. We think we can do much better than that. We think we can have a higher percentage of the units deemed affordable to a lower income percentage. And I think that will, the more we do, the more we make progress there, I think the more our conversations with the AG could be benefited from that. I just think it smooths the process, and it also fulfills the will, I think. So the $533,000, I think that's the number that we applied for the Community Preservation Committee. In addition to the money we have, I think the over $700,000 we have in the bank now, that puts us in the game. You know, that's $1.2 million. That doesn't mean all of that would be spent on this project, but you know, affordable housing is expensive to build. There needs to be some subsidy, as Julie said. Any developer's ability to compete for state or federal funding will be enhanced if they know there's some local funding, some match, if you will, on the table. So that's what we're hoping. We hope to reserve some of this for a future project down the road and not spend all on the town farm, but but we'll have to see. This will certainly, I think, complete the package that we could present in an RFP to potential developers, and then give the town some choice about what type of development we want on that site.
It gives the Affordable Housing Trust a long-sought leverage position.
Yes.
And I just have one more question before I open it to the floor, and that is, you talked about the joint letter to MHP, and that would necessitate a working group. I would take it. Do you have a plan on how to do that, a timetable for doing that? Do you have some specifics that you would like to lay before us so that it doesn't drift?
You could just vote on this.
Right. You know, I don't think it needs
There's
to be
some
overly...
questions to be answered in this before we...
And I don't think it needs to be overly cumbersome, right? We certainly would welcome an invitation to walk through all of the questions with you, and, you know, we try to round out our response, our answers to many of these. We had 2 really great meetings, you know, specifically to answer these questions and put them in a form that could either solicit more questions or could be, you know, directly responded to back to MHP.
And,
Yep, nope.
I think it's also important to the RFP that MHP will draft is indeed a draft, right? It just moves the process forward. It doesn't complete anything, because that RFP will come back to you for further discussion. There'll be presumably there'll be some things we love about it, and maybe some things we still want to tweak. So it's not an end product in itself. It just allows us to move the ball forward, and that's why we, you know, in a few of these we punted a little bit, because I think those are discussions we want to have as we develop ideas, we hear from the public, we pull it out. So I don't think we have to, I agree with Julie. I think this is a good start, and anytime you're ready or able to engage in a working group, or however you deem appropriate to get a final product that could be voted by you.
You do have a desired timeline for the RFP?
I would love to see the RFP. So in most cases, the developers responding to an RFP like this would want to have on their horizon the funding rounds that the state provides for affordable housing resources. So those funding rounds, in fact, tomorrow, we press send, and I work for an affordable housing developer. And so I think what would really work well for the funding rounds is to issue this sometime this summer, sometime in June, July. And so issuing it, and then you have a deadline for submission for proposals, and that could happen at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, you know, September or so. Usually give about 6 weeks or so for developers to craft their proposals and visit the site and, you know, create their vision for the site and run pro formas, financial pro formas, and then submit it into the town. So the funding round in February of next year, it would be great to have selected someone. Doesn't mean they're going to get funded in February, but selecting someone, because sometimes you have to go into a funding round more than once.
Thank you. And
MHP
I'd open it. I didn't know if, Erin, are you still with us, able to be with us? I was going to start with Erin, but she...
I am, Mr. Chair. I am. I'm just listening. I think that they covered everything that we've been discussing. So I thank them both for being here this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zulus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of process, it sounds like we need to move on this if we're going to have an RFP by June or July, because this is an initial stage to get into MHP, and MHP creates a draft, they send it to us, and then, so in order to get something by June, this is something we need to move on. So one way to do this, it seems to me, is we could have maybe Mr. Milano or Mr. Zawinski work with Mr. Callahan, Ms. Kramer, to create a draft for us to consider and then we could consider that at our next meeting. I mean, that's, if we want to move on it, it seems to me.
Exactly the type of working group I had in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Zulus. And maybe there are one or two others that Mr. Milano would recommend.
And Tim and Josh have been very helpful in the development of this to date, but, you know, obviously we continue to work with them, so that would be great.
That's great.
And just to Mr. Zulis's comment, MHP has indicated to us that they can turn they're willing to jump right in and turn the draft RFP around pretty quickly. I don't know exactly what that means in terms of weeks, but I don't think we'll have to wait too long for that. But I think time is still of the essence, because we'll want to take some time once we receive that back to process what's in that draft RFP and discuss that further.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Do you want to go first, Richard?
Julie?
Go ahead, I have a few. I'll wait till everyone else. The 30-minute inquiry.
I have a couple of comments. At our last meeting, I had requested I wanted to see the will and trust documents. I know Kevin, whatever. So I didn't receive anything in my packet. The information from you, Julie, today, we received around noon, and I was working all day. So I haven't really had a chance to really delve into it. So I do appreciate that you did provide that, but in all honesty, I haven't looked at it. I just would remind the board that we have a fiduciary responsibility as being Governor Stoughton trustees to do the best that we can do. My understanding is for the poor of Milton, and I think we have to really think about what that means. And I would hesitate to rush into a decision with a deadline, just to rush into something quickly, because you are coming today and presenting this and saying we need to get this done right now. I myself am new to this board. Ms. Bradley's new. I haven't seen the documents that I've requested to be able to understand it a little bit more, and I think it's a little unfair to have to make that decision right this minute or within a week. I don't think that's fair. I actually don't think it's really fair and equitable to be able to do that. And I think we really have to look at everything. When we're looking at anything, we have to really examine every aspect of whatever decision we make. This has been around, my understanding, for 300 years, this will. And there have been select board members before myself and before many of us on here, and they've had to make these tough decisions through the years of what's best for the poor of Milton. I love the fact that that we have given funds to the Milton Residents Fund and people that that may be struggling with food insecurity, with heat, with those type of issues, and those will be real and ongoing, and those demands will only grow with time. So I just want to make sure that we examine everything and we're not sort of cornered and rushed into a decision. And there are people on this board that have been here longer than I, but I think we owe the residents of the town to do the right thing. And that means that if it takes us a little bit longer to examine everything, then we need to. And I'm requesting that I get some of these documents as well. I would love to see when we sold the land to Pulte Homes what the agreement was with that. I want to see what, I want some history here on this. And I have not really received that. So I think we have to be prudent with this, and we represent everybody in the community. We have to make the right decision. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's no rush, per se. We have time to do everything that you've...
And I would add that, every RFP says, that you don't have to act on the proposals, right? So getting a proposal and getting a sense of what could happen up there, which is going to be pretty special, is another way of you to get informed. I realize there's been many boards before you, many select members before you that have sat on their hands. That's upsetting, right? This land was willed, right? Governor Stoughton, and we had folks living up there. We had the poor of Milton living up there. So to reestablish that and to create something up there, I think the select board would want to be supportive of that. But I I want to give you all the time you need. I think the will is a great document. I think the Pulte information is important because Pulte left this portion of the site, right? What did they leave it for? Well, I think you'll find that out once you read, right, through all that information. So I want to give you as much time as you want, but we've been sitting on our hands for a lot of years. And I think it's important that we act in good faith for the will and what the will is saying, for the use and benefit of the poor.
Right, and I think that is what is up to interpretation, though. What is the best use for the poor? So I think I hear what you're saying, but I think what I'm hearing is that you're frustrated because this has gone on for a period of time, and I get that. But I think that we also have to be prudent and smart about this, and I think we have to look at every angle on it. And so that is where I'm coming from on that.
Yeah, and just to reemphasize, we're not asking you to make any decisions. We're asking you to move the ball forward in the process and get a draft RFP. So it doesn't not only does the RFP
not bind you,
but certainly the draft RFP just allows the discussion in town that I think you want to continue. It's been a 20-year discussion. I was called into this by a past select board member, Charlie McCarthy, about 20 years ago, and that's when my first.
That's the people home watching tonight are saying, "Who's he?"
right. But
I'm not one of them.
But he was concerned because there was a family living, grandparents living with grandchildren in a house that was full of lead paint, and he was concerned about the town's liability, frankly. I think smartly. And that started this whole process, approximately 20 years ago. So admittedly, nobody wants to rush this. This is an important decision for the town, but it is, I think the request that we're making tonight is just to continue to inch that ball forward so that we can continue this discussion and have a robust discussion with the various constituencies in town.
Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. So clearly, for full disclosure, I've probably got a 20-year history in this and was part of the non-awarded bid that bid against Pulte, which not only preserved those 30 existing areas, but rehabbed and converted all the existing structures on those 4 acres to affordable units, and that was 2002. That was a long time ago. So my 2 questions are this, and I was at your presentation, Julie, before the CPA. So I know what you've asked for. I get that. And if I go back to my first introductions when I was 6 years ago, when I was a junior member of this board and I was on the Affordable Housing Trust, so you want to take some of this money to buy down, am I correct? What we call 80%. You've said this, you've described this to me many times. Yeah. Because the two key, my two little things in this, and you heard last week's, and you and I have talked a million times. The 2 key things are, A, getting the Attorney General to sign off on this. That's the key. Right, Kevin? He's not raised his head, but he hears me. He hears me. John Flynn's listening. That's the key. And 2, to meet the terms of the will, you want to go beyond a regular, tell me if I'm wrong here, go beyond a regular affordable unit to be able to offer housing to someone who truly would be described as poor.
Not exactly.
Well, I'm not saying, like, I've heard you use terms sometimes as low as 30%, I think this time, are you looking at 80, or are you looking at less than, and?
So, I'm not responding.
I heard Tom, right, I get that. Okay.
So I'm not responding to a proposal, right? When I do respond to proposals in my professional life, you have to weigh the resources that are available to develop, build, operate, own property, right? So the request we're making into the CPC for...
I heard that, right, I get that.
The developer would come to the town and say, this is what I'm gonna build, this is what you're gonna get for your $500,000, and this is and this is how these are the targets I would make for income targeting, this is how, I plan to meet the will, that's what you would get, right? So we, as a town, can say, we think 80% AMI is the poor of the town.
You do, okay.
That's not what I would think, that's not what I think.
That's what you think.
But as
they
a
will.
town, we could say that, right? I think that we're selling ourselves short. I think that that land should be used for deeper affordability, 80% AMI, which is the AMI level that the 40Bs
Right.
hit, right?
The 2 units over in East
Yes.
Milton, right? 80%,
That's right.
right? 80%.
I think there should be deeper affordability.
I agree.
And you're able to do that through subsidy, right? Because it's just because they're lower AMI units,
I know.
they cost the same to build. So CPA funds are one way to do that. So it's one way to say, with the CPA funds, we expect X, Y, or Z, right? And then then we respond to proposals. So the piece that I think is tough for the AG is that we're saying, make a decision, AG. They have to know what they're responding to.
I agree.
So if we had an RFP that the town agreed on, that, the Governor Stoughton trustees finally got comfortable with what we were asking for, what it represented, how it was serving the poor, all of that, we could take this RFP and submit it to the AG, and then they would have something to respond to.
I got it.
We can't say, AG, can we build affordable housing on that site?
I know that. I already know. I know the
They
answer
need
to
to
that
know the
question. I've been there, right?
And so, again, this is why this step is so critical, because we're sitting on our hands, and we need to move it, right? We need to move it. It doesn't mean we're gonna build it. It doesn't mean we're gonna, but we need to move it. We need to make some decisions to create an RFP that other developers can respond to, and typically, we've got some really great housing developers in Massachusetts. I can give you addresses.
You don't have to.
Of many, the company I work for has built on 2 poor farms. If
The only problem is they didn't have that well. You and I have talked about, they didn't have that well.
Well, yeah.
I've seen the product. though.
Hyannis.
I saw the product. I did
If
see
you
the
look
product.
at those, you would never say those are,
No.
So I know we keep, the AG, we gotta do this, the AG can't respond to something that they don't have.
Yeah, and I think we've done this, we've taken the steps in town, right? 7 years ago, we established the Affordable Housing Trust. 2 years ago, we passed the Community Preservation Act. And now, so the dominoes are falling, or the pieces of the puzzle are coming together, and this would be the next piece, that's all.
Roxanne?
I have another question. I will say that what I've heard a lot from the Council on Aging is that we have a lot of older residents in town that are struggling, and they're struggling with housing. So my question would be, is this something that you would target with this kind of a proposal, that it would be for the older residents that are really struggling right now? Because that is, if you talk with the people that run the COA, they will tell you it's an overabundance. They get multiple calls a day on this issue. So I'm trying to understand, is this for, what group is this for?
That's what the RFP is.
That's what I'm asking.
That
What are you
is for.
targeting?
I mean, we took the position in this paper not to call for specific age restrictions, like to make it a 55 and older development, which is, right, a thing. We have some market rate 55 and older developments. But that doesn't mean it couldn't be designed in part with elderly folks in mind. I think you're right that there is a tremendous need in town of low-income elderly. So a multi-generational, my neighborhood on Orono Street is a multi-generational neighborhood. Recreating that, the town farm would be special. There's a couple of decisions that we'd have to make in the RFP. Do we advertise the RFP as a 55 and older community, which is senior only, like Home Inc. is, and or do we call for units that are accessible and would be of a size that elders would find
Within the development.
yeah, within the
Something
development. Yeah, so there's so many. Again, that's going to be one of the, I think, conversations that we can have once we sort of move that ball forward in terms of drafting an RFP.
And, a non-age-restricted property doesn't prohibit elders from living there, right? And sometimes you see a project being built and they're primarily one bedrooms. And, without saying it's a 55 and over,
right.
It's, primarily being built for elderly folks, right? I agree with you. I see a lot of need for age-restricted, affordable housing in Milton, but I also see a need for family housing. Most of our units on the SHI, the subsidized housing inventory, are age-restricted. And so we have a chance to do something up there that maybe brings the two together, has some elderly, units, age-restricted units. I hate to use the word elderly because I'm getting so close, and family units. So, that would sort of be our preference. Open up the housing options for a broader group, right? For folks who can't find housing here.
Would it be a Milton preference?
You can legally only do a Milton preference for as up to 70%. So that's the state
Right.
MCAD, Mass Commission Against Discrimination. So again, that's another decision you will have. You could waive local preference. You could assert local preference up to 70% of the units. But that's a decision that Governor Stoughton trustees would have.
And it could also be someone that works in town. So you can
right.
Workforce,
work
right.
or live currently in town.
Right.
Mr. Zulus.
Let's be clear on what's being asked here. We're not being asked to make a decision. We're being asked to join the Affordable Housing Trust in a letter to get information. So if we're interested in information, which would be a draft RFP for us to look at, if we're interested in information about this, this is a way to get information. It's not a decision, it's a way to get information. So I think the request is probably of the Select Board. My hope is that we'll have a draft to look at our next meeting, at least a draft to look at, and I don't think that's unfair to have a draft of a letter to look at requesting information that will give us more information that we can use in making decisions. Again, we're not being asked to make any decisions here. This is just to get information, so I don't think that's unfair in any way. So
The only thing that we've recommended is that we have a working group to do what it is that you're discussing.
Yeah, and again, I think, is it the Select Board that you want to send the letter with the Affordable Housing Trust, or the Governor Stoughton trustees? That's probably the Select Board.
I agree. I don't think they'd even know what the governor.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're used to MHP is used to dealing relating to a Governor Stoughton trustee. You're right. So it's probably the Select Board.
Probably the Select Board.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
They want the chief.
Yeah.
Executive body.
Thank you.
Body.
I mean, they could have issued an RFP just by our response, right?
Right.
But they can't, because you control the site. And they're not going to spin their wheels, right? They're not going to say, oh, Julie, Tom, we trust that you'll get the Select Board there. They want to hear from the Select Board. They want to hear.
If they're going to invest time, they want.
So we have an entity, Mass Housing Partnership, that wants to give us help for free, information for free, and all we need to do is send a letter to get information for free.
Yes, correct. Yep. And they've done this
from this
hundreds of
discussion
times.
to the Select Board and do just that.
Can I ask my question now from last week about that house?
Pest house?
Could we get ready for affordable housing, the pest house? Please.
So as you know, in the, and I'm actually old enough now because I have a red, white, and blue card, that I knew all the tenants. So in the Pulte deal, they moved the pest house in. I'm sure you've seen it. So my thought is, what I asked last week is, it's still a unit. Why do we not, let's put some money into this and make this habitable and rent it to someone who needs it?
You
No one
know,
seems to want it, so I'm like,
I know
I want to vote here.
It seems really logical, and, you know, of course, right? It's up there.
Right.
Why not rent it? But you're talking about a fairly considerable amount of work that needs to be
Right.
done there, right? You've got to, you know, find the person to live there, so you might have to do a lottery.
Right, I'm fine with, I don't, whatever.
You
have
know,
to manage it.
You have to
Right.
manage it, like who's gonna
I think
take
it-
care of it? Who's gonna make sure the heat's on? Who's gonna make sure, you know, there's a lot of work for one unit.
It
right?
totally makes sense to build that into the overall,
RFP.
whatever, the
Yeah.
RFP. I think that's,
Which was similar to what- that was
that's
what we did.
anticipated, but I think the single unit, we don't have an entity necessarily that would be logical to, maybe the Housing Authority, I don't know, could do that, but they don't have.
They own single-family homes. They do manage single-family homes. Some, that's in their inventory.
Yeah, so.
It's just a
you know,
shame
so-
to see it sitting there, move, new
But it's a shame
foundation.
to see the whole thing.
I know.
But it would need, but it
You
would
said
need,
it.
you know,
It's a
it has no
shame.
bathroom, no kitchen, no, you know, it needs substantial.
I agree.
Investment of funds, and,
Substantial work, it needs constant care, right?
and we can get a developer to do that as part of the overall
I just want, I
package.
brought this up last week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
not for you, and Michael suggested, why don't I?
I actually heard you, I heard you.
We heard you.
That's why I was smiling when you raised it, I knew where you're
Right.
going, so.
We understand, you know.
It's
and
a good thought, and,
It's a great thought.
I said it to Melinda the day after they finished. I'm like, well, let's get something.
right.
I mean, you know, you might have to do ADA work, right?
Right,
Visibility, you know, there's a lot of work in just that one unit. But if you incorporate that one unit into a broader plan, where there's someone who actively manages and takes care of that property and mows the lawns and makes sure, you know, the toilets get unclogged, you know, all those
Right.
little things that, you know, just, I don't know. I just,
You're welcome. Well, thank you both very much.
thank you.
Right.
We appreciate this conversation, and.
Appreciate it. We have some next steps to move on,
How many years,
including.
Tom? How many
honoring
years,
of the
how many years you?
20,
oh,
well,
it's
I've been a resident of town for 28 years now.
I remember you
so-
speaking on, to the point you brought up tonight on that Granite Ave, when Granite Ave was being looked to be developed. And that's gonna be at least 10 or 15 years ago.
And with Governor Healy saying she wants to get rid of some state lands for affordable housing, that has been one of, I mean, she hasn't said a lot yet, because, on affordable housing, but that is one of the things, so.
Julie's moving in tonight by eminent.
Granite Ave might be back, so it's good
For
to see you
sure.
discuss it earlier.
Sure.
So,
Oh, thank you.
so let us know,
yeah, if.
we'll make ourselves available.
Mr. Chair, is this, the version we received today, is that kind of the final version of what the trust has worked on, subject to comments coming back from members of the select board?
Yeah, it's
red line,
awaiting,
yep.
awaiting your.
Awaiting.
All right, so I'll redistribute the version that we're referring to, and then members can take a look at it. We can include it on the agenda. I just want to make, that's your proposal to the select board, and we'll take it from there. That's right.
And if we could put it in the form of a letter, how the letter would look, that would be helpful to me.
And that would be done at the select board level.
Yeah.
So we move this from the trustees to the select board officially.
And I make a motion, because we don't have anything, I was gonna make a motion, we don't have anything on for a motion tonight.
And we'll make ourselves available as needed to help us get a finished product for your review.
And MHP is a great resource.
Well, I think we have a consensus for this meeting. as
We
to
live in
direction.
temporarily at 88 Granite Ave? That's the address.
I just want to confirm, we have a consensus.
Yes.
Okay, as to the next step. And we thank you both, and can we entertain a motion to adjourn from the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust?
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion?
She's rejoining,
Willis?
sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Erin's just rejoining now, Mr. Chair.
She's left.
No, she's here now.
No, I've been listening this whole time. You guys
Oh,
were
good.
just in the car with me. Now I'm home.
Are you ready to adjourn?
And so, yes, the answer is yes, I'm willing
you.
to adjourn.
Ms. Busto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you. So we adjourn from the Select Board as trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust meeting. Now we return from recess and enter into executive session. And let me
Good night. Good night.
read the motions. We'll take them one by one and then have a roll call vote. I move into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property located at 930 Brook Road, plus a convent, Front Point Convent Sisters of St. Joseph, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the Select Board. The Select Board will adjourn from executive session. Is there a second to the motion? Thank you, Mr. Wells. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes.
Good night, kids.
The second is, I move to enter into executive session to discuss the litigation strategy against the Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority, MBTA, related to the condition of the stairs at the MBTA station located at Adams Street, Milton, Mass. Based on my belief and discussion that this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Select Board.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Busto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. And thirdly, I move to enter into executive session to discuss litigation strategy with respect to litigation filed by the town of Milton versus the Federal Aviation Administration, number 22-152, U.S. Court of Appeals, First Circuit, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Select Board. Second.
Yes.
Oh, second, yes, sorry. I'm already thinking into our discussions. I'm putting the meeting in my head.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Busto?
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes.